Merrick Garland, the Democrat AG, has been found in contempt of Congress. He's refusing to turn over audio of a conversation with Biden about his health and a prosecution and his prosecution. You see, the prosecutor is saying, Biden's just a bumbling old fool and he can't remember things and they're never going to get him convicted. So for that reason, we just can't criminally charge him. But at the same time, Steve Bannon's going to go to prison for contempt of Congress. Eric Holder was never held responsible for being in contempt of Congress. So we're definitely seeing a double standard. We'll talk about that. And then we've got some news that Ukrainian impeding aid list, some people call it an enemies list, in which I am included, as well as Jack Posobiec and many Republican members of Congress, is under fire and may be getting defunded thanks to the efforts of members of Congress like Rep. Jim Banks. He sent me a letter saying, just want to let you know, you're on this enemies list. And I am, I did a segment where I probably was angrier than I've ever been at this idea that they dare insult me because I'm supposed to be of the opinion they deserve my money. That's what they're writing. They write this article. They write this whole map of all these individuals, and they say, these people are in the way of us stealing their money. How dare they? So we're going to talk about that. But before we do, my friends, tonight's episode of Timcast IRL is brought to you by MyPillow. MyPillow.com, promo code TIM. Shout out to Mike Lindell. You guys know Mike Lindell. He's fantastic. He's a nice guy. He's a good guy. But you know that he no longer has support of big box stores and shopping channels. We've had him on the show recently, and he's going to help us out. He's going to sponsor the show, and we're going to shout him out. He's having a $25 extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just a problem solution, one product company. Since then, with the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products, some you may not even know about. To get the word out, they've asked us to shout them out, and we will. Their $25 extravaganza includes 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, just $25. Sandals, $25. Their 6-pack towel sets, $25. Brand new 4-pack dish towels, you guessed it, $25. For the first time ever, premium MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, any size, any loft level, even king size, just $25. And I will admit, we have about 300 MyPillows, maybe like 200, because we did this event here at the Freedomistan, we call it, where we set up a gigantic MyPillow pit and everyone was jumping into it. So we do use them. The amazing offer won't last long. Order now. Go to MyPillow.com. Use promo code TIM, T-I-M, or call 1-800-925-9096. Shout out again to Mike Lindell. Appreciate it, Mike. You're a good dude, and I wish you the best, and I hope everybody supports MyPillow. They make great products. Also, head over to timcast.com. Click Join Us to become a member, because we're going to have that members-only uncensored show coming up at 10 p.m. I think Discord should be working just fine tonight. So when you become a member, you sign up for that Discord, you can submit questions. Call in and join the show with us and our guests. You don't want to miss it. So please support our work. The show is only possible with you as members.
I'm staying this time. I've never stayed for the third hour. I've never been able to make it. But I've been inspired by the trip out to the new studio. All right. And so if people hang around for the third hour, we're doing all three this
We got some questions for you. We got some good ones. We got some good questions. All right. Smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel. Share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight, he already shouted himself out. What's up, Matt?
Good to be back, man. I tell you, every rally I go to, everywhere in the country, there's at least one person who walks up and says, you should be on the Timcast more. So I think our long-form, unscripted conversations are epic. There's a lot going on. There's a lot under the surface. Ballpark, it's a really bad time for the country right now. We are in a free fall. We are close to the cliff, and there's a few of us fighting to try to turn away from that ultimate ending. And I know there's a lot in this audience who are rooting for us, and so looking forward to chatting.
I've said it before. You are at least my favorite member of Congress.
You say the same shit to Thomas Massey.
That's
when
not
he comes
true.
on the show. I know, because my wife was watching, and she's like, babe, I know this is going to be a real hard night for you, but you're no longer Tim Pool's favorite member of Congress. Massey is. And I'm like, well, I think Massey is like my mom's favorite member of Congress.
I don't know that I would have said, I maybe said he's one of our favorites.
All right.
But I have a lot of disagreements with Massey.
Well, sure.
He's a good dude, and we agree on a lot, and I respect him fighting back. But there's a lot of things that I've argued, and I've read stories about him. But the stuff you've worked on, I mean, especially, people have complained about the McCarthy stuff after the fact because now we have Speaker Johnson. I don't care about that. I want to see someone who actually represents the will of the people. Afterwards, we cross those bridges. So we'll get into all that. We got a big show tonight because Ian is here as well.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, man, I'm glad you're here, Matt. I'm glad to be here because I feel like you are kind of the the needle into the veins of what the hell's happening in the United States, and we can either extract data from you or we can give you data to put into the system. I'm really happy to get a hold of your expertise, man.
I'm driving out here and I'm like, what is going to be the crazy Ian question that is not an actual question, that is just testing to see what an accommodating dope I'm willing to be. So I'm on the hunt.
The water was warm.
I'm on the hunt.
Bro, we're going to talk about the Empire. I'm talking about the British Empire and the Emperor himself.
The Empire is striking back, actually.
Phil is here.
How you doing, everybody? My name is Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I'm an anti-communist and a counter-revolutionary. How you doing, Hannah Claire?
I'm good. I've said it before. I've said it. I'll say it again. I'm tonight's diversity hire. I'm representing all the estrogen in the room. I'm Hannah Claire Bremel. I'm a writer for SCNR.com. Hi, Serge.
Hello, Hannah Claire. Let's get into it.
That's not fair. This is a minority-owned company.
Sure.
So
and I'm helping. I'm gender diversity in this room unless you guys
true.
are going to make any announcements tonight.
So we had this big hearing today on like how the FTC is trying to get more authority on, not the FTC, I'm sorry, investment vehicles are trying to leverage their power to try to get ESG, DEI, and how they will literally say, like, we're the investment board for one of the largest investment companies in the world, and we're going to vote against directors like based on the color of their skin, based on their gender. It's incredible what's going on. But they are bragging about it. Yeah. They are objectively bragging about it.
Well, we'll start here. The big news today was House Republicans holding AG Merrick Garland in contempt for withholding Biden-Hur interview audio. The gist of this is there's a Biden health crisis. He is so unhealthy that we can't criminally charge him for his criminal actions. But I guess you were there, Matt. Do you want to break down for us what's going on with this?
Well, I mean, I guess, Tim. I mean, like, just zooming out, okay? We have a situation where Donald Trump is the leading contender for the presidency. He's facing unprecedented lawfare. We have the people who are involved in the state and local prosecutions going to meetings at the White House, communicating with officials at the DOJ, absorbing into their workforce senior officials from the DOJ. This is the big problem with Merrick Garland and with the Department of Justice. When we ask for those records, those calendar meetings, those emails that will really reveal to the public a new thing that people need to know, we send letters, we don't issue subpoenas that we're willing to enforce, and we just let that go. And then meanwhile, we get you leading the A block on the Timcast with, we have held Merrick Garland in contempt because he is holding from us something so rare as is Joe Biden potentially being mentally and physically feeble. I'm like, we just watched this guy probably crap his pants at D-Day. Okay, like nothing on the Merrick Garland video is going to be worse than we've already seen. But we choose that for the unprecedented power of contempt, and then we just sort of leave unaddressed the actual real issue. So yeah, I voted for the contempt. We have a right to the information. He's the president of the United States. There's an impeachment inquiry. He should have given it to us. But at the end of the day, I will not take any congratulations for House Republicans for this move, because it is like the lowest of lower energy action. And actually, I think it's rather misdirected. Like, do you want to live in a world where there's no limiting factor on the ability of any Congress in the future to go root around an investigative file that didn't result in a criminal prosecution? Do you want to live in that world?
Nobody wants to, but do you think...
Does Steve Bannon want to live in that world? I don't know that that's like kind of the best thing for separation of powers either.
But why am I leading with this on the A block?
You're leading with it because you are so thirsty for anything that we have done that is of any meaning or that anybody is being held accountable for anything, right? It's like when the families go to SeaWorld and like what the sea lion does is not all that impressive, jumps up, does a flip. But like after you've been there with your kids all day and you've been sitting in that line and you've paid the $80, whatever that sea lion does is going to be good, and you're going to applaud and you're going to pay for the $12 hot dog.
I'll give you 95% spot on. The 5% I'd say is we lead with what you guys do. And so the story of the day is that you've held Merrick Garland in contempt. And then the gist of it is we complain about how the only thing that ever gets done is strongly worded letters.
We did the wrong thing. We contempted the wrong conduct.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we scored in the wrong end zone. That is my criticism.
What's the conduct you want to put him in contempt for?
Look, I believe that the worst thing going on right now at the Department of Justice is what they're doing to Trump. It's not even the protection of Biden. It's what they're doing to Trump. And there is evidence that they are involved in that. There are meetings that we know happened at the White House with Nathan Wade and Fani Willis. We know there are personnel that literally left senior positions at DOJ to do the career downstream to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, right? And so we want the employment records, the references, the correspondence, and Merrick Garland tells us to fuck off, and we fully fund. Oh, I'm sorry, we gave him a 7% cut on his budget. Naughty, Merrick Garland. But then they hold back like video of Joe Biden stuttering. And we act like, God damn it, if we don't get this, we're going to use the awesome power of contempt. Does that not offend you?
I want to mention real quick, because you mentioned the poop into the pants. So because I love ChatGPT, asked it if it was reasonable to assume that Joe Biden crapped his pants. And it was like, no, there is no evidence to suggest this. And then I said, there's more evidence that Joe Biden crapped his pants than there is that Donald Trump worked for Russia. There's more. We actually have a video where he's like squatting down, and it was like,
ask anybody who's had a toddler what that move looks like.
So
right?
Here's what I did. I then asked GPT if an 81-year-old man standing up during an event squats down, grimaces, stands up, squats a little bit, is it reasonable to assume he may be suffering fecal incontinence? And it goes, yes, that is reasonable to assume. And I said, and if it's Joe Biden, no, how dare you?
Honestly, the same thing happened one time when I was at a party with Bill O'Reilly. I think he shit his pants and then had to shuffle off.
Joe Biden did?
No, Bill O'Reilly.
Oh, wow. I mean, these things happen. I don't want to derail into that, but I think you're correct. When it comes to why we can't prosecute Joe Biden, I'll give a little bit to this. I mean, this is them saying they're not going to criminally charge Joe Biden because he's a doddering old fool and it wouldn't work. So we know this already. That's already been said. That's the worst thing about it. There's nothing more to reveal, right? They've outright said we won't prosecute him because his brain's gone.
Did you ever think Joe Biden was going to get prosecuted for these documents? Did you swallow the hook that hard? Did you ever believe it? No. Right. I mean, like, what are we talking about here, Tim?
Okay, well,
he was never going to get prosecuted for this. Rob Hur, the guy that they selected to be the special counsel for this matter, was Rosenstein's like right-hand man, henchman. Whenever we tried to get answers out of Rosenstein, out of the Hillary stuff, it was Rob Hur that was playing block and tackle. I mean, he is a deep state capo. Right. The fix was in on this.
So I don't.
So what
I've long resigned. I rag on the Republican Party quite a bit. Not nearly as much as Democrats, because the Democrat Party seems unified in their chaos. But there's like a dozen or so Republican members of Congress who do good things. And so I don't really expect a whole lot from them other than strongly worded letters. That's the running meme. That's all they're going to do.
No, look, I think that Tucker Carlson taught me the power of humiliation is very real, and particularly public humiliation. And if we can drag these people forward with the power of the subpoena and we can browbeat them, we can alter their conduct. There will be no drag queen story hour in the month of June on military bases this year because of the way I dog walked Lloyd Austin. Okay, the policy changed as a consequence of that. Now, we have to do that at great scale in every committee with vertically integrated subpoenas, the way the January 6th committee did. And instead, we play the typical Washington game. And you know why? Those strongly worded letters make people money. Like, imagine you're the corporate entity, right? And you get those. There's a whole little cottage industry of like lawyers who used to be congressional staffers who take those letters and they joust back and forth, and like all their kids are in the same soccer leagues together and they're part of the same kind of social class of DC, and it's all meant to be professional wrestling. And the way you know that's the case is because we don't use the power of the purse.
Why not?
Because it's a corrupt. I mean, this is the essence of our discussions that they always devolve to. Who is really making the decisions? The core feature and function of Washington is to ensure that no one ever really looks at the money. And the way to ensure that happens is to make sure that everybody's voting on all of the money all at once at the most inconvenient time.
Yep.
So the government runs out of money on September 30th. And what they'll do is they'll say, oh, we're so close to getting those single subject spending bills Gaetz wants. And so they'll kick that thing to right up against everybody's Christmas and Hanukkah recess. And then they will jam us with one of these omnibus bills where it's you take it all or lose it all. And they will have bought enough people off with earmarks and a special accommodation for you and a win for you to take home to your district, where we will continue this downward slide that I warned about it are open.
What are these vertical integrated subpoenas you mentioned?
So yeah, so I remember we had a great episode. I still run it on the Gaetz Network, which people can find on my Rumble stream at @RedMattGaetz. The episode we had with Steve Bannon in my congressional office, and I just returned from the January 6th committee's vault with all of their files. And here's what they would do: they would assess a target, and they would say, how does that person communicate? All their email, all their phone, all of their devices. How do they move? Do they have Uber? Do they have, is there a way to check tolls around their house, around their places of work? And then how do they spend money? Where do we get their bank records? I mean, I looked in the Bernie Carrick file and I could see where that guy bought a cup of coffee from McDonald's in New York City. And the only file that was totally empty was Steve Bannon's, which I believe was to ensure that they did not have evidence there in those records that they didn't want out for their own reasons, perhaps. But that was all a surprise to Bannon that we broke on the Timcast. So that is how you do it. You go after how they communicate, how they move, how they spend money. And then once you get a target, any person of significance in this country has all their electronic life on probably at least 3 or 4 devices or in places, in clouds or with different servers. So they would subpoena, both sides of an email. They would subpoena the email service provider. They would go to the assistant. They would go to a spouse that might have access to records or family members. And they got a full picture on people. And then it was to acquire the target and then to find some basis to do that person harm.
If you were going to do vertically integrated subpoenas for Merrick Garland, it would be like you just find his bank records, his Uber transactions, all these things,
Look,
and then I would ask him for them.
I would start with what is the conduct that we know was connective tissue between the Department of Justice and these state and local entities, right? We know there were calendared meetings that occurred at the White House. So let's get all records in and out of that meeting. Let's get the travel to and from there. Let's get all of the correspondence from the people who attended those meetings in the 24 hours before and after. If they're not provided by the subjects themselves, you go to their assistants. If they're not provided by them, you go to their service providers. And eventually you find somebody who's going to give up the information, right? Who was the biggest witness in the January 6th matter? It wasn't any of the principals. It was somebody's assistant, Cassidy Hutchinson, because she had records. She knew who had attended meetings. And then she was able to lash lies onto things that occurred with the appearance of validity when, later when that was probed, it was proven false.
She lied, claiming, but I guess it was like a hearsay thing where she's like, I was told this thing happened, that Donald Trump lunged to try and grab the steering wheel. And it would imply that Trump has the ability to phase through solid matter because there's a barrier in the vehicle. He can't just do that.
He's just that good,
I don't understand. Are these people cognizant of their evil? Do they know that what they're doing is evil?
I think that there is an intricate system in Washington that brainwashes people, that is well-resourced, that has human talent around it, and that creates kind of a nurturing ecosystem for people to come into that embrace when they feel as though it's the only place for them to turn. Cassidy, for example, wanted to go down and work after January 6th, was dying to go down to work in Palm Beach County. Asked me if any of my friends had places where she could stay while she got permanent housing, was eager to go work for Trump. And then, when that employment situation didn't work out, I don't know if it was personality conflicts. Some folks said that they didn't like her contacts with the media. But then all of a sudden she felt isolated and, along comes a Liz Cheney and say what you want about the Cheneys, and I've probably said it all. It's not a universe of amateurs. It's a group of people who've done this for a long time at a very high level.
Do you think that the Justice Department is ultimately a savable institution, or is it sort of so deeply corrupted, there's so much interpersonality issues there that it's not something that you could just turn over by getting a new AG?
Personnel is policy there, and you've had a lot of the same people who rotate into the Justice Department, out to big tech and to big business, and then back to the Justice Department when things change. Like if you look at the people who've worked at DOJ and then go and end up working at big tech companies, it is the true revolving door, even more than the White House. And that's why actually big tech never gets held accountable, because they want to create just enough virus where they can then sell themselves and their buddies as the antidote. Meanwhile, the American people see their interface with the digital world change for the worse. So I think that personnel is key, but also devolving authority outside of Washington is key. Like, we've talked about ways to make the U.S. attorneys who live in the communities, who have to show up at the local grocery store and worship at the local church, more empowered to make their decisions, where everything is not run through this praxis up here. And also with the Justice Department, I think that getting them outside of Washington, D.C. would be better. And this is an area where I disagree with President Trump. Like, President Trump believes Washington, D.C. has become a shithole, and that the only way for America to achieve her greatness is to have a great capital city. And it has to have our institutions, our buildings.
You're real estate minded.
Yeah, people can't, defecate on the street and live in our parks and green spaces, that has to be a place of splendor. And he thinks sending the FBI to Thule, Greenland, as I would, is improper.
With these subpoenas you're talking about, these vertically integrated subpoenas, if they were issued widely, would it then? So I imagine none of them have been issued yet, but you want these to be issued by the House of Representatives. Is that how it works?
I would rate our distribution of subpoenas and enforcement thereof at maybe a D+, C-. And I say that with no joy. Let me give you an example, Ian. The House of Representatives in the 218th Congress has never subpoenaed Hunter Biden for testimony in public. How do you explain that? If we're shooting for the pin, if we're not laying up, how do you explain that?
I kind of think that the establishment, the uniparty, whatever you want to call it, has been in consistent control of Democrats and Republicans for decades. And in 2016, probably a little bit before that, we started to see insurgency within both parties. You had the more lefty populists, you had the right populists. For obvious reasons, I think we saw tremendous success among right-wing populists in getting into the Republican Party, much to their dismay. And they're desperately trying to shake loose this MAGA, Trump, or populist faction.
We're like long COVID. We don't go away.
But you look at AOC, and she's supposed to represent the left populist.
Yeah, but
she's fallen in line instantly.
Yeah, she's totally co-opted.
What part co-opted her?
Well, the moment she gets elected, the moment she wins a primary, she's backtracking her stance on Palestine and Israel. And the left immediately came out and they were like, we thought you were on our side. And all of a sudden she's like, well, no. Well, she has constituents. Then there was... I can't remember the specific moment. Do you remember when Pelosi came to her and told her to vote? I think it was the
speaker's
speaker vote, right?
Right.
She said, like you see on the video on C-SPAN, AOC is voting. I think she was voting. What was it? She voting no or something?
No. She voted for Pelosi, and what she got for it was a spot on the Financial Services Committee and the Oversight Committee, which
didn't
for
she
a
switch?
freshman is getting paid.
She switched her vote. So there's a video where you see Pelosi yelling at her, and then all of a sudden the vote changes or something like that happens.
Well, I think she's sitting there, and they kind of have an interaction, but the deal was cut
right
before that moment.
Exactly.
Because she gets on these two primo committees, and she votes for Pelosi.
Do you think that moment was intentional then, because it makes her look like she's standing up to Pelosi to her constituents?
Well, look, I went through that. You think I started with 20? When we opposed McCarthy, we had way more who were just like, we know this guy's corrupt. We know he lies. We know the truth ain't in him. We're never before him. And then those people stopped coming to the meetings, and next thing you know, they got a real good committee spot. Yep. So it's a part of the economy of Washington, right? I mean, I wrote in my book about when I first got here in freshman orientation, I really wanted to be on the Armed Services Committee. I represent a military community. I thought they'd want to know what my foreign policy views were, or what the GDP of my district was relative to the military. And they were just like, look, you owe $75,000 to the NRCC in the next 10 days.
They want to know how many zeros you could put behind a couple numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, I showed up with 150 because I figured if they're for sale, you definitely don't want to pay and not get one.
A business
and
opportunity.
So, they said, we think you're a real comer, and put me on judiciary as well.
Wow.
That's for paying double, I guess.
Yeah, and I paid twice. So
yeah, I can't remember who told us that story. Someone was
Massey, maybe.
Was it? I think it was Massey.
Massey and I made a movie about it on HBO. We made a movie called The Swamp. They followed us for a year and they observed how there's a scoring system and a ranking system, and based on your committees and your assignments, and whether you're a chairman or have some other goofy title, what you have to fork over to rent those positions.
So you either use your influence by supporting people in the Congress, or you use your money and buy your way.
Well, it's actually you just serve as a broker. So imagine you're some poor schmuck from Northeast Arkansas, and like, you don't have a lot of money, and you show up there to orientation, and they sit you down, and they're like, so we're gonna need $250,000 from you in the next 2 years, and we need like a third of it in the next quarter. And you sit there and you're like, holy shit, how am I gonna do that? Now we know you're gonna be on the Armed Services Committee. Here's the best steak you've ever had. It's the best wine you've ever had. And seated at the table are a bunch of defense lobbyists who are like, Ian, we hear you've got an assessment. We are going to do the first event to make sure that we get you toward that assessment. And you start thinking, so wait a second. There's some people who want money, and there's some people who want to give it to them. And if I just act as the pass-through, then I get credit for it? That's the situation they set up. And that's how they kind of get you.
I imagine they butter you up like crazy when you're a freshman in Congress. They say, yeah, you got a real good head on your shoulders. You're a smart guy. Wow, we'd love to get behind you.
Yeah, a leadership potential.
Yeah.
We think you're that's always the code that you're a real cuck, is when they say you're a leadership guy.
We're talking about like the country. You mentioned the country. I think that I have a similar view to what the country is that you do, which is part of why I get along in political conversations with you like this, that it's like the United States Constitution. That's a big part of it, preserving decentralized authority. But there's like this imperial power, and they're big bankers and stuff, and the emperor of England, emperor of Britain. I don't know, in Five Eyes, the spy club, they got the CIA is probably deeply entrenched. So like, I don't like the liberal economic order, man. I don't like that America has military bases all over Earth, but what's the next best option?
Let me do this real quick. Let me jump to this story so that we can get into that conversation, because
nice little warm-up amuse-bouche from Ian.
Right.
How do we deconstruct the world economic order with a viable solution that is in no way chaotic at the outset?
Prepared for that question.
Let's start with this. Some news. This is Fox News enemies list of Trumpists and communists.
Raise your hand if you're on the enemies list.
I am. Is it just us?
Sergio.
Do we get to
So wait,
vicariously
Serge, are you
be
on the
there?
list?
Can we be there because you're there? Like we work here. I'm not on there.
Okay, so let's slow down. No.
Well, hold on. First of all, Phil. Tim got on the enemies list through guilt by association, so you should be able to as well.
I feel like I should.
So basically, what's happened is this NGO in Ukraine published this roller coaster thing where they list a bunch of individuals, what is it, like 300 and some odd individuals, that they say are impeding their access to funding. Basically, what they're saying is, you, American citizen, are in the way of me taking your money. That deeply offends me. I get really angry by this. I'm an American. I pay taxes. You are Americans. You pay taxes. And these people wrote up a thing mad that as non-U.S. entities, they want my money to pay their bills. You can ask nicely, but to tell me I'm in your way of my own money, I'm glad I am. So here's what they do. They have this connections. And then they have this big list. There's Donald Trump, and I'm in there somewhere. Where am I? I'm like floating over here, Tim Pool. Now, I will tell you what is the most offensive thing about this is.
Where am I?
I don't know where you.
I'm in there, bro.
Somewhere.
I know it's hard to find because they don't. You got to be big. Like you see how the big ones have names on them, like they actually label them. I'd imagine yours would be one of the bigger ones, right? There you go.
Oh, there we go, baby.
Yeah. No, hold on.
Central.
They don't connect you to me over here. Like, we've had Tucker Carlson, Vivek Ramaswamy. We've had Marjorie Taylor Greene. We've had you. We've had Jim Jordan. We've had all of you on this show. And
you should consider yourself very lucky that you made the list, even though they're not fans of the show.
Right? So anyway, I am deeply offended by this list. But the breaking news now, according to DC Drano, the Ukrainian NGO that started an enemies list, which included U.S. congressmen and private American citizens, using Biden's State Department funding, has just been defunded thanks to the leadership of Congressman Jim Banks. So Ian was just bringing up this like international liberal economic order. And this is what I really see here. The war in Ukraine, I watched a video earlier, and it was an international volunteer group fighting in Ukraine. What we are looking at right now is it's an extra governmental entity using the labor of the American people to fund non-citizens and foreign entities to fight a war for NATO. We are witnessing war that is extra governmental at this point. We did not approve of this. The American people did not vote for this war, but we are paying for it whether we want to or not. And then you've got a video of a British guy, a Canadian guy, a New Zealand guy, and they're fighting, flying Ukrainian flags and killing Russians. And then they're mad at me for not wanting my money to go towards that. The United States has become a vassal of an international military cabal. And it's been for a long time, but now it's plainly visible in front of us. I'm hoping that what we're seeing with Trump, with you, Representative Gaetz, is that there's a fracture in the hull of their ship?
I would suggest that the kryptonite to that that non-governmental, maybe even post-governmental warfare, right, to that liberal world order, it's strong nation states. And that's why this very post-governmental regime is turned against people like Trump and Melee and Bukele in El Salvador, who's totally changed that country.
Oh, yeah.
And they fear the sense of pride, strong borders, and just realism that would deconstruct what they've done, I think, to be so damaging. But to just break down for a moment where I've been on Ukraine, the amendment I filed that might have gotten me on this list was just that we should follow our own laws regarding the end-use monitoring of our own military equipment. These aren't new laws. These are laws we've always had about just when we send stuff that can shoot into a war zone, we like to keep track of where it goes. Yeah. And when I ask under oath, I can't tell you what I hear in the classified briefings. Well, when I ask in the public hearings under oath, can you testify that we are fully compliant with the law? The people charged with enforcing and overseeing those laws cannot truthfully do so.
Well, we know billions have already been stolen. We know that there are mayors who are greenlighting fake companies that had just formed to receive U.S. money, and then these individuals disappear. We know that Russian forces were able to successfully launch attacks because fortifications were never built because Ukrainians are just stealing the money. And then they have the nerve to write this and say that we are in their way of continued stealing of our money, of your money.
I just think any elected official on this list or anyone seeking office should use this as a point to say, look, I don't think we should send it. They're noticing that I did something. I said, no, we should not continue to ship money overseas when America has enough to deal with.
I might tell my detractors, you might think I'm a shitbag, but do you really want to borrow money from China so that your children can go into more debt so that an NGO can call me a shitbag?
Do you think
is that really what you think we ought to spend our money on? But to the point about how absurd it is, we are paying for their pensions, but we also have paid to retire debt that Ukraine incurred before the Russian invasion. So we are $34.7 trillion in debt. We go another $1 trillion in debt every 100 days, and we are paying to retire Ukraine's debt. We are borrowing money from China at a higher interest rate to retire lower interest rate debt by Ukraine. And I have to say, while I am a huge Jim Banks fan, and it is a coup for people in my movement that he seems to be on a glide path to the United States Senate, and he's done the right thing, we cannot declare victory on this one legislative maneuver for this reason. All we have passed is the House version of the National Defense Authorization Act. The Senate must pass their version. So if you don't have a companion measure there, this then becomes the subject of negotiation. And the people who are involved in these negotiations probably are aggrieved by this a little less than you and I are. And so the pressure has to be kept on to not fund this stuff. Right now, we have run the first leg in the relay race, but getting the Senate to act, getting this to survive conference is critical for that to be achieved. And I'm not sure that would happen.
When you were mentioning, these people who are like, we're gonna fund you. You got to go and pay the NRCC. Can an individual just pay that? Like, if there's a member of Congress who gets elected, can some guy walk up and be like, I'm gonna pay so you get on these committees?
Yes.
You can just any amount.
By the way, how do you think I got on committees? Do you think I went to any special interest group? I went back to my community and said, don't you guys want me on armed services? If so, everybody here at dinner has to write somewhere between a $10,000 and $25,000 check.
Wow.
And I'm grateful that I live in a community that has enough success and affluence and enough people who think like I think, where they pulled out their checkbooks and they doubled up. But not everyone can do that. And if you can't do that, then you're more susceptible to the lobbyists who then own you.
But so Ian over here can write a check for $75,000 to the NRCC on behalf of Riley Moore and get him on a committee.
Is Riley Moore in Congress?
He just won the primary, and he will be in November.
Yeah, he could do that.
That's crazy.
You think it's
You're
a campaign
a generous
donation
guy.
At the very? I am.
And it's not a campaign donation?
Oh, no, it is. It's reportable. The NRCC says.
But you can donate any number? There's no campaign.
Yeah, I think there's an upward limit somewhere, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
What?
Does it have to go to a PAC first?
Well, because the NRCC exists to elect Republican members.
But
it often is weaponized against the people who have a more populist perspective. Because why? The NRCC runs on special interest money. So people who reject, like, I am of no value to the NRCC. Because I don't raise money for them, I don't give money to them. I'm not particularly interested anymore in their perspective on what committees I should serve on. Because I think that the people in our movement would think it would be like a human rights violation if I got thrown off my committees. Yeah. So I don't pay the money, and so they would far prefer to have fewer people who think like I do, and more people who are hamsters on the hamster wheel.
Because the reason I brought up, someone super chatted, does your show get enough money to start buying off politicians so they can do the right damn thing for once in their lifetime? And I'm like...
Well, you cannot buy politicians. You can only rent them.
So that's my question. I mean, we go to a member of Congress and say, we're gonna pay the NRCC what they are looking for to make sure you get the committees and do the right thing.
Thomas Massie told the story about how someone thought he could do a real good job on the Ways and Means Committee, and the lobbying group said, this is what we're willing to pay for you to be on the committee, and we need you to share our perspective on these issues. And I think Thomas pretty much told him to fuck off.
Wow. So how do we stop that?
And he never got on the we got some people on some committees because we used leverage. Kevin McCarthy did not want to put Thomas Massie and Ralph Norman and Chip Roy on the Rules Committee. And that's the committee that determines what even can be voted on. What amendments are even going to get the dignity of a vote.
How much does it cost to get on that committee?
Huh?
How much does it cost to get?
Typically, if you're not someone that's giving, upwards of around $1 million a year, you're not really considered for the Rules Committee. But
can afford
but
that.
our folks got on the Rules Committee because we said, Kevin, what would you prefer? This to be the slate of people on the Rules Committee, or for you not to be able to hang your portrait? And he was like sort of a moth to the flame on the portrait deal. But now we got our folks on the Rules Committee, and that's not to say that they think like I think on every issue. I'm sure they don't, but I know they're not corrupt. They didn't get there because they bought it. They got there because we used leverage, and I think that is not a perfect system, but it's definitely the better one.
When they come in and they pay to get someone on a committee, who does that money go to?
Well, oftentimes the NRCC takes that money and they will use it at times to play in primaries to select the type of person that's likely to participate in this, in this Amway scheme that they have.
For people who don't know what the NRCC is.
Yeah, the National Republican Congressional Committee. So it is the political wing of the House Republican Conference. The Democrats have one. They call it the D-TRIP, the D-Triple-C.
And these are basically like political organizations that help people get elected.
Yeah, they're ostensibly their purpose is to achieve the majority. So you have to have money to do that, and they have the ability in law that you don't have. They have an ability to buy television advertising that you don't necessarily have at rates that you don't necessarily aren't able to get. And so they have that primacy in law. It's one of the reasons we have a two-party system, because we've wrapped our campaign finance laws around a two-party system. But anyhow, they exist for that purpose. They have to raise tens of millions of dollars. If you want to be the leader of your conference, it's somewhere between $60 and $100 million that you need to raise.
How often?
Well, every year.
Every year you need $60 to $100 million.
And Kevin McCarthy, to his career, raised about $1 billion. And what I said to folks is, what did that cost, right? When Kevin McCarthy walked into the speakership, having raised nearly $1 billion, not just with the NRCC, but also CLF, other aligned PACs and entities, all of that together, that's $1 billion worth of IOUs. And, for all of the criticism I take, I turned those IOUs into Confederate money.
I love it.
Because they're gifts. They're considered gifts, technically.
Well, they're considered donations.
Donations. So what's the tit for tat? Their expectation they're going to get something in return. If it's a donation, that's not how donations work.
I'm sure the mobile home lobby gave their, $500,000 to these entities just because they wanted people to live better lives. I'm sure the pharmaceutical industry didn't ever want special treatment.
For you to vote a certain way on a bill that might help them. They would never want anything out of you.
So, Ian, let me explain something for you. It's illegal to sell booze, right, unless you have a liquor license. So some teenagers, some college students got smart one day and said, I know, we'll just sell cups. The beer is free. Do you think the police went, drat, they got us? No, they went, nice try. It's called solicitation. You're under arrest for selling beer without a license. So what we see here is you don't need someone to write down, I owe you one favor in Congress. They just come to you and say, remember that $10 million we gave you? Yeah. Okay, well, you know what that means.
So if a conversation like that, if it was recorded, would it be illegal?
Please, it said daily in the halls of the Capitol. And here's how the parlance works most often. Congressman Poole, we'd really love to have your support on that amendment, or we'd really like you to sign this letter. And we'll see you at the fundraiser next week. It is that direct. It is that proximate. And it is that disgusting. And the fact that people are willing to do it underneath the murals of Jefferson and Adams, underneath the bust of Washington, it is debasing and unpatriotic.
Our culture is fried. That's why.
So do you think, is it better to try to work within that system, find people that can actually function in the system the way that it is to actually affect policy that you want? Or do you think that it's actually better to try to have to elect lawmakers that will work to change the system, because it's so deep and it's so complex to actually get things done? What's an effective means to, if not change policy, produce policy for the people that they actually want? Because right now, the government's not doing that.
It is the question. And I will not come to this conversation with the hubris that I know the answer. I believe you have to change the incentive structure. If you want to move the mouse, you have to move the cheese. And I believe that there is an incentive structure around doing the right thing if you are willing to be bold and relentless. And if you are willing to take the criticism. I am one of the top fundraisers in the House of Representatives, despite my unwillingness to play this game. And it's not that I have a whole lot of billionaires who are writing $6,600 checks to me. It's that I have 200,000 donors that go to MacGaetz.com and give me an average of like $80. And that is I am able to have the resources necessary to win every election I've competed in under that model. And I've tried to show people that if you do that, the people will be there for you. And if we didn't do dumb stuff, it wouldn't cost us as much to win elections. Yeah. That's the other thing. The reason Tony Gonzalez needs $9 million to beat Brandon Herrera by 429 votes is because he has a really bad voting record. If he voted better, it wouldn't have taken $9 million. Herrera had $1 million. Congratulations to Tony Gonzalez, I guess. He had 9, but that the establishment looks at that and say, we won. I look at a race like that and say, we are coming. If we can align some of these things and answer Phil's question with a bit more precision and depth than I have, then the energy is there for it.
So what advice would you give to Riley Moore, who might be the new congressman from West Virginia coming in the fall? I mean, it sounds like it's a really challenging model if everything is sort of working against you.
It really is. And I couldn't give someone advice that could make them sufficiently resilient. You have to believe that you ran for this job for some reason other than self-aggrandizement or to go be the valet for special interests. And some people convince themselves that I start as a low-level valet, but I can move up. And instead of just being the valet for the Corolla, I can be the valet for the Cadillac. And then after that, the Maserati and the Rolls Royce. And I just look at that and say, it's dumb. It is just, why do you even want to do that? Wouldn't it be better to lose on the stuff that would save the country rather than just preside over our decline? Because these people fear losing an election. And candidly, I've done this for 8 years. I have my moment in history. I fear that my kids and grandkids are going to read that I was on the board of directors of this country when we went off the cliff, when it all turned upside down, and when the hope for America was lost. And I know the people have the right values, but I see every day how disconnected our leaders are from that. And it is tragic. And so the question is Phil's question. Do you go every day and do you scrap and claw within that? And oftentimes the people who do that justify selling out for their own advancement. So I don't know this individual you're talking about, but I think faith is an important part of it. And mine is not perfect, but I think I've seen how the people of the strongest faith, even not my own faith, but they have strong faith. It gives them a true north that it at least is something to believe in beyond the bullshit that the special interests tell you. And then you literally hire a bunch of people who tell you you're right about everything. right? People don't move up on congressional staffs because they tell their bosses they're wrong and dumb and
note to your
ugly
staff,
and
I
lame
guess.
and cringe. They move up because they say you're doing great.
Yeah.
And that's what's addictive about it. It's
Well, the fact of the matter is, like you said, the incentives are all wrong. So you're incentivized to, if you take the incentives and you try to work within the system to get things done, you're going to have constituents that are going to say, "Oh, he's a swamp monster." You're going to have people saying, "Oh, he works with people I don't," because you have to have anything that's effective happen. You have to work with people that are going to make your constituents turn their nose up, right? If you wanted to do something with, say, AOC, people are going to be like, "Oh, you're going to have a problem."
Yeah,
with
but
it.
I
So
let
what
them.
do you do?
I let them. Look, AOC and I do have legislation together. We actually think that it's crazy our government's policies on psychedelics and psilocybin and a bunch of the other things that have shown the ability to save people's lives and let them have better marriages and just, interact in a way that is not like criminal or institutionalized, God forbid. So I will work with anyone and everyone to improve the lives of my constituents. And
you get crap
I
for
need
that, though.
and I need the votes of people who don't agree with me and who don't really buy my shtick, right? That who say that we want somebody who's like going to go and just do the job and not try to create all this trouble. And what I try to sell to those people and why I think some of them still do vote for me is whether you agree with me or disagree with me, I'm doing this because I believe it. And when the people see that in a leader, I think they are willing to give you grace on disagreement if they know you aren't full of shit.
What was the reaction after the ouster of McCarthy? Or actually,
The first reaction was the one you curated in Miami, Florida. I hadn't been
everyone was
outside of
cheering and-
Washington. I had not been outside of Washington, since the ouster of McCarthy and everything that had been going on to try to replace the speaker. And I did not know, and I went into that believing that might be the end for me politically. And I was okay with that. I had totally zenned out that this could be a suicide mission. But we had to make a change. And when what do we have? 800 people that were at that event.
standing ovation.
They were there. They were there for us, and it definitely was a moment I will never forget.
Because the one thing that I can say, a lot of people have complained about Speaker Johnson for a lot of reasons. But one thing I can say is
one of them.
But you turned $1 billion in dirty, corrupt, dark money garbage into confetti, as you described it, and that is an amazing pie in the face for the corruption in D.C.
Well, I appreciate that, but it is but one hill because the empire struck back. Mike Johnson is a tremendous impressionist. He can do an impression of anyone. And I just wish he would do an impression of Mike Johnson from October.
Right.
Because like the Mike Johnson I sat next to for 7 years and talked about every issue with was against warrantless surveillance, had voted against $300 million going to Ukraine, and campaigned explicitly on single subject spending bills. And what we got was continuing resolutions, an omnibus, billions for Ukraine,
But we all heard him
and surveillance.
when he said, "Here's everything I believed," and then they brought me in the back room, and when I walked out, I decided all my opinions were wrong.
Even
Well, you know
Thomas
what?
Massey says that he was full of it, that he was in the room with him, in the skiff with Mike, and he was like, that didn't happen, and he knows that didn't happen. That's what he told us on Tucker Carlson. It was pretty fascinating.
I was not in the skiff with Mike, but what I can say is I would always afford someone like the ability to have that type of earth-shattering experience. But if that were to happen, then it is incumbent on you to convince the rest of us.
Yeah.
To really convince us, to get the smart people who really think about these things and who are fully engaged. And if it is that searing and that meaningful, then you have the obligation as our leader to either convince us or get out of the way.
It's the one ring. Speaker Johnson was handed the ring, and he pulled a Bilbo in his face.
Yeah, I was thinking of this, like,
power now.
he's on the Death Star, and they're like, hello, Commander, welcome to your new position. Now, here are all the secrets and what we're going to blow up next. He's like, and they're like, don't think about it. And there's dudes with guns standing behind him. And he's like, well, I signed up for this.
That's too much credit for him.
Like, we're the empire. I want to talk about the empire. And I think it's the only empire on Earth because the Japanese empire was shredded after World War II. The Ottoman Empire is no more. It's a British
Boromir.
empire.
It's a gift to use against our enemies. He thinks
It is both,
he can
for
wield
sure.
the power. This absolute power tends to corrupt absolute.
Like you said, you're on the board of directors of the Death. You didn't say the Death Star. I'm going to call it the Death Star. It's the most powerful military force on Earth. It's a business corporation. So, like, how do you function on the board of directors along with Mike Johnson and other people in Congress? Like, to to soft landing. We don't want to blow up the earth. Do we want American military bases all over the earth? Or are they just going to turn into corporate military bases if we give it up, the liberal power structure?
Well, if you look at before the projection of power that you see now, there was a lot of corporatized force. Look at Latin America in particular. The whole concept of the banana republic is because United Fruit and Standard Fruit were down in Latin America standing up armies and carving nations out of the wilderness for corporate interests. So it's not as if no part of the world has never seen what you just described. But in terms of how I interact with a lot of these folks, folks know what they're getting with me. I don't have any secret plays. I'm very transparent. I'm very direct with people, and folks can usually take to the bank that if I'm going to, put my mind to something, that usually we can be effective.
Do you guys get involved with like the World Economic Forum and try and be like, look, we're headed towards a new world order of some sort. Maybe it won't be the liberal one anymore. BRICS is obviously making a play, but like, do you guys get involved with these big?
Yeah, but I don't know if I grant the premise, Ian. I don't know that that nationalism is dead. Like, I look at what's happening in the Western Hemisphere right now. I mean, look at these elections that we're seeing in Europe. Look at what's going on in Germany throughout the culture. I actually believe that we could be in the renaissance of the nation state, and that those are the folks that should be more worried about us than us being worried.
I'd like to see it, but like Canada's the monarchy of Canada. It's like the King Charles of England is the king of Canada. Like you want to call it a nation?
Should have just made them the 14th colony.
And Australia,
if we knew there was oil there,
the emperor's the king of Australia.
They would be singing Yankee Doodle instead of God Save the King.
Canada would join America in a lot of ways. I mean, I think they have some of them have their own ties to their national identity, but a lot of Canada is unhappy with how they're governed. They're just sort of the minority because they're run by Justin Trudeau, and because they have mass immigration that supports a more progressive government.
Yeah, but isn't the answer to that isn't deconstructing the globalist entities that are interfering with Canada? The answer to that is Canadians.
Yeah. I think it falls back on the citizenship. I think we should have more countries that feel as though their citizens are important. And
if El Salvador could do it, I just got back from El Salvador. I went there to Bukele's inauguration. This is one of the most impressive people I've ever met. And I'm sitting there looking at a country that was functionally a failed state, and now is poised to be the Singapore of the Western Hemisphere. And I'm thinking, if this country of 6 million could do this merely by locking up 70,000 people, then I don't buy that Canada is so under the thumb of the globalists that they can't prevail.
Well, and it seems like it took, I know it's more complex, but it basically took one guy to turn it around. I mean, really, a lot of these countries need to pick a leader who believes in their citizens and wants to stand by them.
Yeah, and it's got to be more durable than that, right? It's got to be more durable than one guy. But I think in every major movement, there are people who become the beachhead. And I saw in people in the Congress, people in his government, people in the diplomatic corps, Bukeleism, arising as this notion of secure. We're going to have a great band. We're going to have a national campaign that people aren't going to litter here. This is going to be a beautiful place that people are proud of. And that's the stuff that I think gets into the younger generation. Bukele told me the story. He pulled out a picture of a poor little school in El Salvador, and all of the students there was police, there was a chef, there was a businessman. And he said at this school last year, all anyone wanted to be for Halloween were gangsters and bandits. And now every one of them wanted to be something else. And that's how and you compare that to us. I mean, when I was in El Salvador, Tim, we go, Ginger wants to go sing karaoke. As you know, she loves her some music. So we roll out to karaoke, and everywhere is all this stuff about Father's Day. And I'm thinking, do they celebrate Father's Day a different day? And some of the people at the bar said, oh, no, we celebrate fathers the entire month of June. We think so much of fathers.
Father's Month.
I was like, we do something else in the month of June.
But we should. We should have a culture that is pro-family, because that's one of the most effective ways to turn younger generations around, right? I mean, this idea that you'd have young students thinking criminals are what they should aspire to be, I think that is something that happens in America as well. But if other countries can change, hypothetically, America could too. I just wonder if there are enough people who are willing to act on it day to day.
I don't know that we aggrandize criminality so much as just virality. Right.
The fame-seeking culture.
Yeah, we've got young people thinking what is good is what is seen. instead of like what is making some progress or making things better.
Right. It's sort of about getting eyes on you as opposed to actually making a difference.
Yeah. Well, and look, I deal with it myself, right? Oftentimes we look at our work, and if people are not observing the work we are doing, if we do not draw people in to the mission that we're on in a particular part of the world, I was real instrumental in getting our troops out of Niger, to your point about having troops everywhere, right? And so, but if no one knows that, if no one sees that, are we really making a durable point rather than just taking some action? So I think it demands balance.
I want to jump to this clip that we have of you. This is a tweet from Rep. Matt Gaetz, who said the interim chief investment officer of CalPERS wants more diverse perspective and DEI hires at his company.
This is 5 minutes, but worth every bit of it, and the end is the best.
All right, well, let's hit it. Let's play it so you can hear it.
Mr. Bienvenu, how much do you invest each year on behalf of how many of your members?
We manage a $500 billion portfolio on behalf of our 2.2 million members and beneficiaries.
And you've highlighted your principal responsibility is return for those beneficiaries, right?
Correct.
Now, who is this guy and what does he represent?
So this guy represents all of California's public workers, and he invests all of their money. And what they're doing is they're bullying companies to accept DEI and ESG if they want these investments. And if they make the investment, they're actually going in and voting against folks who might be on the board based on the color of their skin.
And the let's play the can't choose to use a different retirement.
Oh no!
Right?
Oh no!
They have
this
to
is
go
it.
with this.
You're forced to work with this guy.
Let's play the clip.
The thing that we do every day is about generating returns to pay benefits.
And you've worked there 20 years. You've been the principal deputy since 2020, right?
I was named the deputy chief investment officer in August of 2020, or I'm sorry, in April of 2020.
Okay, great. And so I think there's some parallels between what's going on with ESG and DEI. You don't deny that CalPERS has a DEI agenda, right?
CalPERS is all about generating returns to pay benefits, and every topic that we approach is through that lens.
Well, does DEI improve the returns to your investors?
I think part of good governance of a company is having diverse perspectives brought to bear as they manage that company, and I feel strongly about that for the investment team that I lead. Also, we want diverse perspectives.
And what is the evidence that you rely on for the belief that the DEI agenda will produce better returns? Is there any study, report, analysis?
As an investor, I read research reports constantly. I probably read 5, 6, 8 of them a day. So over the course of my career, that's probably been thousands.
I know. I'm just wondering, is there one that kind of sticks out in your mind? You can say, Congressman, I'm here to do good by these 2.2 million beneficiaries, and my embrace of DEI, this is what I can point to as the evidence that's helping them.
Every data-based study can tell lots of different things, and every data works that way. That's the way investing works. And remember that when we're focused on investing, we're focused on how we...
Mr. Bienvenu, you can either cite a study or you can't. You can't, right?
Okay. In the thousands of studies that I...
Just name one. Okay, well, here's what. I found a study that actually CalPERS did. You guys did this study. It's entitled Emerging Diverse Manager Data Report. And I'm citing from the 6th page of report where it says, since inception, current diverse managers generally underperformed non-diverse managers in the asset class in the policy benchmark.
But he reads lots of stuff.
Are you familiar with this report?
Can I see a copy of that study, please?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record the Emerging Diverse Manager Report published by CalPERS.
Without objection.
I'm not able to show it to you now, but you don't have any basis to disagree with the agency you've been a part of leading, saying that the DEI hires aren't doing as well as the non-DEI hires.
As I say, when we think about diversity, we think about diverse perspectives being brought to bear on investment decisions.
Right, but okay, so those are two different things, Mr. Bienvenu, because on one hand, there's provide returns for my investors, and what your own data says is that your DEI hires underperform there. And then on the other hand, you say, well, all these diverse perspectives are really important. But I worry about the market manipulation and the bullying, because as I review what CalPERS has put out under its own investment guidelines, you brag about the fact that you voted against 768 directors at the companies you invest in most recently, and then in the prior year, you'd only voted against 133 directors. So is CalPERS voting against people as directors for companies based on their skin color?
We take up every vote independently based on the merits of the vote itself.
Right, but do you ever consider, like, someone's skin color? Because it's pretty immutable. People don't choose to be white or black or Asian. They just are.
We choose based on what will make the best oversight.
You're under oath
for
here,
that
Mr.
company.
Bienvenu. Can you deny under oath that CalPERS is voting against directors based on the color of their skin?
I can tell you we make every vote based on what will make that the best board for oversight of that company.
Right, but the best board is actually not doing so well. So, Mr. Chairman, let's look at the scorecard. In the state of Florida, where we aren't pushing ESG and DEI, the Florida retirement system is netting a 7.5% notch for the fiscal year. May I enter that into the record?
Without objection.
And CalPERS reports only 5.8% for 2022 to 2023. Can I enter that into the record as well?
Without objection.
So you're not performing as well. Your own data says that your DEI hires aren't performing as well. And you were there for 20 years, and you applied twice for the chief investment position, and you were passed over for that position twice, and you said you weren't going to apply for it the third time because you'd been passed over twice, and I guess they've hired an immigrant to do that job instead. Do you think that maybe you were passed over for some of these DEI reasons?
CalPERS hiring decisions is their own hiring decisions, and I'm not really a part of that, candidly.
Clearly you aren't. I yield back.
Wow. So my question to you, Matt, is did you witness the spine be ripped from that man's back, or did he show up without one?
He was not just a DEI purveyor, he was also a victim. And like there are moments you want to feel bad for these people, but actually the institutionalized racism that is DEI only happens because there are people like that. Because there are people that are willing to do it. Imagine being one of the people that was like up for one of these board positions and it was just you were too white. You didn't get hired. And then what message does that send all the way down an organization like that and throughout the economy? And at some point, isn't that why we have antitrust laws? If there is collusion to literally like de-whiteify the entire corporate system in our country, like doesn't that seem worse than what Standard Oil was doing? It does to me.
Well, there's a funny meme, and I can't remember who posted it, but they said, isn't it funny that if someone flies an American flag, you know exactly who they're voting for?
Yeah. It didn't used to be that way.
That's kind of scary, because what that says to me is that there's an invasive force taking over our country from us.
And if they're flying it upside down, I know how they're voting in primaries.
Oh, yeah. But it's scary. I mean, you have when I was at the Trump rallies in 2015, people are flying Mexican flags. They're outside protesting Donald Trump.
Isn't that the argument about nationalism at some level? You know, people are flying their flag.
Yeah, but they're flying it in the United States, saying, make California Mexico again. And then you have millions of people crossing the border. They march to this country with their flags of their home nations, illegally enter. And then my favorite thing is, I say it sarcastically, Joe Biden claiming he's securing the border by setting a threshold to allow illegal immigration. Crossing the border is a crime.
Okay. Could we get into the Biden border thing?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so first of all, we get Joe Biden raising his hand at the Democrat debate saying, I will give the illegal aliens free health care. We remember that moment, right? A pretty searing moment. He gets elected. They show up at the border, like waving their Biden signs with their Biden T-shirts. Kind of obvious that moment has induced this. Then they all get here, and then they say the border's secure. The border's remember there was the whole border is secure era?
Well, they also said he had gone to the border. Like, we don't know what's going on.
Well, then after they couldn't maintain that era anymore, they went to the border is chaos, but it's actually the Republicans' fault that the border is in chaos. And we're like, just reinstitute the Trump policy. He's like, no, we have to have the Langford bill. Then we went into that era. Remember the era where the only way we were going to secure the border was with a bill that let in 5,000 people every day. And a bunch of us were like, you actually don't need a bill at all. You just need to undo the stuff you did to screw with the Trump policies, and everything will be fine. And then lo and behold, here we have, with no bill at all, Joe Biden doing the very thing that we've been calling for the whole time, maintaining, the border that Trump did, or at least asserting he will.
No, but what he's done is, if you go back to when I think it was Homan, was that his name? It's been a while. He says it is a crime to illegally cross the border outside of a port of entry, and he cites the code. What's happening now is Joe Biden says, we got 10,000 coming across the border every day. Well, I'm going to make it 1,500. That's an increase of 1,500 from zero. It's all illegal. They should all be deported and arrested and detained. Why are we allowing any amount of it?
Well, we shouldn't. I mean, by the way, and that's not enough. I mean, we truly have to engage in internal enforcement of our immigration policies at this point, or we don't have a country. And it's simple. There's no reason an illegal alien should be released into this country if you have the Title 42 public health authorities, remain in Mexico, and safe third country. Those three things give you a detain or remove option with every illegal immigrant.
But shouldn't we also disincentivize people coming here illegally? Like, shouldn't we end birthright citizenship so people don't say, well, I just need to rush to the border and have a kid?
We're in the minority in the developed world with the way we treat citizenship. And
I think we're the only country in the developed world that does it.
We get played by third world narcos. Like the next generation of cartel talent slip across the border, have their babies, and then they get the full suite of rights that we would afford any American. And the Chinese get their birthing suites.
Yeah.
No.
This is surrogate too. Sometimes.
Yeah, this is the crazy thing. This is surrogacy. They'll hire an American woman to carry their a Chinese Communist Party child, and then it's born in America, brought right back to China, but has citizenship rights.
We're literally being reduced to our wombs for the Chinese.
It's crazy. But this is the thing. I feel like,
it's the last step in One Belt One Road, our wombs.
Yeah.
But we hear a lot about mass deportations. Is Trump going to do it? I think that would be a great idea, but I don't think it's enough. We should enforce the laws on the books, yes, but we should also revise the laws that encourage people to come here illegally.
And that requires an attorney general that's really willing to write a policy on subject to the jurisdiction thereof around the constitutional provisions of birthright citizenship. And I'm for it.
Matt, you're aware of the people that were arrested, I believe, in New York, the essentially ISIS members.
Yeah.
Can you speak to the repercussions of having an open border and having this kind of stuff? Because if there's 6 that were picked up, I mean, I don't think it's 6 out of 10 million. I think it's probably a whole lot more. And it's not just one group. There are multiple groups that have significant problems with the United States I personally believe that have used the open border to send people into the United States to cause problems.
Remember that trip Mike Johnson led House Republicans on down to Eagle Pass?
Oh, yeah.
We got there a little bit early. And we talked to some of the folks who were there, and they said, Congressman, some of the folks angriest about this are FBI and Homeland Security investigations, because they had a whole special group here that they'd rounded up that they had questions on based on country of origin, where they were from. Not saying everyone was a terrorist, but definitely some people that deserve some extra screening. And when they found out all of you were coming, those folks were dispersed and just sent out anywhere.
Also, I heard Mayorkas talking about U.S. installations along the road that they're taking to get here in other countries. I don't remember. I don't have the clip up here, but I heard Mayorkas talking. I think it was in front of Congress, talking about there are U.S. installations assisting people that are making the journey, which I don't know like I said, the ins and outs of it, but that seems absolutely absurd to me. But it also doesn't seem out of what the administration would do.
It's a global network. And we see evidence that it's a global network, and we are a piece of that, and we fund that. And I was told by our House leadership that in the last spending bill, the reduction in spending of the NGOs that move people around by 20% was a real concession that we got, a real win.
What was it up from the year before?
They've been dealing with sizable increases. I don't know the percentage.
But they did 20% less over 1 year.
Yeah, but I mean, look, we should not be paying for 1 cent of our own invasion. If like the hill we were dying on was the NGOs, then we should have gotten every bit of that.
That's why I don't understand how we can send more money to Ukraine than we do to our own border. Like, it seems crazy to me that this was the priority of the Biden administration, to a certain extent, a lot of Congress. I mean, what happened?
I had one of the senior leaders of the Marine Corps sitting down, and I asked him, how big his budget was. He told me. I said, what if we just doubled it? He said, well, I've never had a congressman ask me that before. Usually folks are asking me to cut money or what could I reposition? But gosh, I could do all these things if I doubled it. You realize the last check we wrote, authorization we wrote for Ukraine, is bigger than the funding of the entire Marine Corps in the United States. We could give that money to Ukraine for 1 year or have an entire other Marine Corps. And at a time when our recruiting is failing, when our facilities in a lot of these bases see the barracks moldy and the food's bad, like for our own troops, it sucks to see us doing this where we're not even following our end use monitoring laws, where we're retiring Ukrainian debt service. And I sort of wonder what victory looks like. And when I've asked questions of the Biden admin officials, okay, so does Putin's strategic defeat, that's what they always use, does that mean that Crimea has to be repatriated? And the answer from all of them is yes. right? So this is the new forever war. And I'm sorry, but I've lived my whole life watching these wars.
There'll be nuclear missiles flying if it's
Oh,
too
no.
long.
I don't believe that. I think that the goal of the liberal order and the regime is to maintain Ukraine as a weapons and money laundering mecca for the next 30 years.
Yeah, but we have Russian ships off the coast of Florida now. Like they're down in
I'll be straight with you. I'm not worried about Russian assets near Florida so much as I am the Chinese ones. And you know, and I'll explain it because Cuba used to have all these, you know, rusted out Russian facilities. They barely could get the propane to those places to turn the lights on. Okay? They were so sucked up into what was going on in Ukraine. And then over the last several years, we have seen the Chinese go in with a leveraged buyout of Russian assets in Cuba, and you're seeing new antennas, you're seeing new intel, you're seeing new crews with new manning structures, and that is a Chinese, you know, stationary aircraft carrier 90 miles off my home state. That worries me less than like some Russian vessels sort of wandering by the Florida coast.
Worries you more or less?
I'm sorry. The Chinese in Cuba worry me more.
I just got an idea real quick, just totally, because I pulled up this photo for the previous segment where all of these illegal immigrants are wearing shirts that say Biden, please. Can you pull this up, Serge? Biden, please let us in. And they have their heads down. They're acting sad. I just got an idea. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy a bunch of properties in like New York, Chicago, and LA. And then I'm going to rent them out at great rates to young liberal college kids. And then after a few months, I'm going to let them know that I've decided to let a bunch of illegal immigrants stay in their apartment free of charge. And they're going to have to take care of them. It's on them, but they're good people, so they'll accept it. And then we'll see what their politics turn into.
Is this also a reality TV show or they're hidden cameras?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Mr. Poole did not actively engage in human trafficking in this experiment.
Sounds like you're attempting to inoculate their psyche.
I'd let them in. And it'll only be the illegal immigrants who have been.
Hold on. You think them doing something wrong and then charging somebody else for it is something this crew wouldn't do?
Dude, I am not seriously considering renting out properties and putting. But my point is, these people who come to the border and they say, "Biden, please let me in." It's like, bro, he's not the boss of us. Like, we live here too. You're not asking Biden. You're basically saying, "Hey, Biden, stab the American people in the back for me."
By the way, this is not happening in Florida. This is happening in New York. This is happening in Chicago. And there's a little bit of, you all wanted these sanctuary policies. You elected leaders who gave you these sanctuary policies. Here's your fucking sanctuary.
Yes, but it's affecting us politically. They are giving Democrats free congressional seats, and they're giving them free electoral college votes. And then it's weighted against the American people when it comes to how we run our country.
Yeah, well, that's why I think the Trump administration made a mistake in the last go around by not being pretty tough on the census accounting for citizenship
they
as a
lost
distinct feature.
Yeah,
but that doesn't require some new law. I
Right.
think we've got the ability administratively to make that change.
Why couldn't the Trump administration get that done? It seems critical to me.
I think at the very beginning, you had people running, that decision process that were afraid of criticism.
Like a staffing error, you're saying? Or
I think these were senior officials.
that's interesting.
It turned me off at the very beginning, but I was treating it more like asking me what my religion was or my medical history. I was like, what? Who has the right? Now, in retrospect, I should have supported it more.
I don't know. Isn't it kind of like a count of the people in our country? It seems legit to ask.
Doesn't it matter how many
Citizen
citizens
voting
are
rights.
here?
If you're a citizen.
Yeah.
So do you think that this is something that there's another way to correct for, or do you think the unknown headcount of how many illegal people are in this country illegally will kind of go
Well, you don't
on?
get another census till 2030.
Exactly.
So you get Trump in, you change this policy, and you're on better footing for the next census. That's the solution.
But that would come 2 years into an administration after that. Is there how many safeguards?
We gotta be ready to run the baton race.
Oh, well, this is actually a really, really interesting tactic for a landlord who's trying to evict their young hippie tenants. Just invite a bunch of illegal immigrants to live there, and then they'll be put between a rock and a hard place of, do I complain to my friends that my landlord is putting refugees in my house and then become shunned and ostracized for being far right, or do I just leave?
But then what do you do with the illegal immigrants who are living in your building?
No, they leave right away.
I don't know that they would.
Yeah.
Why?
Because the deal you offer them is like, hey, I'm going to let you stay here for a week, and say, okay.
Oh, so you think desperate people will honor the righteousness of your
See,
deal?
Matt, that's the best part. They won't go to the police because they're scared of being deported.
in this country now.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned
I'm
Florida,
not actually suggesting you rent properties out to young people and then move. I'm making a thought experiment point that they
It's
would.
only fun if we get to probe your thought experiment.
Tim is trolling us live.
The point is they would never accept it. That hippie, liberal, young people, lefty, pro illegal immigration would go far right on a dime.
Oh, look, you see those pro-Hamas protests going around everywhere. I mean, those seem like some pretty sunshine revolutionaries to me. Any place where they've turned on the sprinkler system, those protests have dissolved like a cheap piece of toilet paper.
Well, that's what we suggested, to turn the air conditioning off at Columbia, and the
Wi-Fi,
protest is gone. Yeah, turn the Wi-Fi off.
Wi-Fi, they're gone. That's right. They can't tweet about what they're doing. They're gone. Because you mentioned that Florida is operating so differently than New York and other places, I wanted to ask what your relationship with Governor DeSantis is like.
Strained, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't so.
Why?
I think that he takes exception to the people who backed Trump, who were Floridians. A bunch of us did. And when Ron ran in 2018, he had no bigger supporter than me. It was a 3-person show. It was me, Casey, and Ron. And I was really proud to be a part of that campaign. I was Ron's transition chairman when he was first elected governor. I was inspired by his leadership style. But Ron is an extreme introvert. And I knew that would be on display in a presidential contest in a way that it might not have been during a governor contest. And I don't think that makes him a bad person. I work with people who are introverts and who are really great leaders and effective. But when you run for president, you have to look like you're enjoying doing it. And when you saw an energy with Vivek, you always see it with Trump, where he's having the best time, handing out pizzas, telling stories. And Ron sort of always looked eager for the event to conclude. And that was not unpredictable, but I wish him well. I'm a cheerleader for the policies that he's put in place. Ron DeSantis has single-handedly enacted what we've been trying to do in Florida for the last 15 years, and we're going to be a better state for it. But I can't say we have a strong personal connection anymore.
Who do you think is next in line for the governorship?
I don't know. It's a long time away. It depends on how it goes in 2024, and I think it also. It also is just a feature of the rightward move of our state. I mean, when I came up in Florida politics, we had 200,000 less Republicans than we had Democrats. We have 1 million more Republicans than we have Democrats. We look more like Arkansas than we do Florida in the 2000s, which is kind of where people think about us politically. So I think we're going to continue to have unified Republican control. I think that we need a strong, bold, conservative leader in the mold of Governor DeSantis.
Because it's not just that. That's the easy one because you're from Florida. But then there's also the heir to MAGA, as it were. Like after Trump, 2028. I mean, who's going to be lining up?
I just am glad that that's the discussion we're having, because success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. And we were here making the case about Trump being uniquely positioned to continue leading this movement at a time when people were saying, well, he's sort of done his part. What's next? What's the new flavor that we're going to seize onto? And I think we understood the unique role that he had to continue to play. And that's where I am right now. I'm following President Trump. I think that if we win, if we build out a great government, if we start delivering on strong administrative action, if we have a Congress that's a partner rather than whatever the Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan two-headed monster was, if we get all that in place, then we're going to have a lot of great choices. And we have a lot of great choices.
I know you won't tell me, but what do you see as your future politically? Would you go to Florida and be the governor? Do you want to run for another office? Do you want to be in Trump's White House? I mean, what happens to you in November?
I don't know. I really don't know. And I've done this for a long time. I first got elected to office in 2010. And what I've learned is that if you start to plan out, this cycle I'm going to run for this, and then this opportunity opens up, it's just like the best laid plans of mice and men. To me, I know what my job is now. We've got to get this Congress fixed. It cannot keep going like it is. If we keep making decisions the way we do with the corrupt influences we have, then we're going to lose the country. And I know that's my role in my job. There are 3 quick ethics things that I think would fix a bunch of it. 1, if you ban the lobbyist and PAC money. 2, if you banned members of Congress from becoming lobbyists or registered foreign agents, because so many people who are supposed to be working now for the people are actually thinking about their job on the other side of the wire. And then the 3rd thing is, for the same reason, you don't let the umpire bet on the game. We should not have members of Congress trading individual stocks. You do those 3 things, it will have a really therapeutic effect on the institution.
Yeah, but the issue I take with that is, I want to adopt the Pelosi strategy. right? That's where you track her stock investments and you get rich quick. You ban Pelosi from trading. How am I gonna know what to invest in?
Just keep playing poker, Tim.
That's right. I will.
Chase the flush draw.
I think that if Trump wins and MAGA Republicans win in Congress, and hopefully the Senate, I think if there's I think that could trigger not a civil war, but a realignment that forces a lot of Democrats to reprioritize to try and win elections again. So
So they come back to the middle in your theory?
they'd be forced to. So what you want is...
Dude, that's not going to happen.
Well...
You think that these genderless, purple-haired woke-topians are going to wake up one day and be like,
No.
if we had more centrist economic policies, maybe we'd get more suburban white lady votes.
Those people are lost. But you do have a lot of Democrats who aren't purple-haired. And what's going to happen is they're going to be sitting there saying, like, look, we just saw like a 5-point swing towards the GOP in our district, which is supposed to be D plus 13. Clearly, this stuff's not working, and we're going to lose an election. We're going to lose ground. Donald Trump going to New York, going to San Francisco, going to the Bronx. I mean, did he go to San Francisco?
I don't know.
He did, didn't he?
I know that he was in California. last week, but I don't know about San Francisco.
But I'm hoping that this can force. You don't think there's any hope at all?
I think that men are leaving the Democratic Party at a rapid rate.
Yeah.
We're at a point where very soon the most masculine force in the Democratic Party are going to be the trans women. They're going to be the ones in charge. They're going to be the only men left.
I think that's true. I mean, I don't know what the Democratic Party has to offer men today. I think I know we talk about this a lot, that the Democratic Party, for some people, has left them behind. Their policies are more in line with what the Democrats were like maybe 50 years ago. But I think ultimately I think a lot of the youngest generation doesn't like either party. And so they sort of look at each election sifting out, well, what are my interests and who is most qualified to represent me?
Like, don't you think that the way the counterculture dynamic has worked in that respect leans right now? I mean, we're either tied or a little bit up with the under 30 crowd. And for some reason, me in particular, I do very well with the under 30 crowd. And I used to be part of that crowd, but it's been a hot minute. And so I think it's because, like, when I was in school, all my teachers were these like kind of liberal wimps. I'm sorry, all my teachers were like the buttoned up conservatives, right? They were all the like, they all were like part of the Rotary Club and, had their hair in the bun. And now they're the liberal wimps. And so you got students now who are like, the way to post up on your pansexual teacher is to like want to get married and be normal and straight.
Yeah.
Well, I think the issue is young people are lonely.
No, there's a loneliness epidemic.
And I think men and women are now seeing that the progressivism has led to just pain and emotional pain and loneliness. So you're getting a lot of young men. There was a funny story I heard where there was like a college party and all the guys were drunk and started singing the Star Spangled Banner, and the women just looked around like, oh, like, what do we do? Because women are one side of are going left and men are going right. Younger guys, I think, you look at Andrew Tate, you look at Jordan Peterson. You can look at the good or the bad, doesn't matter. Young men are lonely, they're upset, and they're looking for masculine role models, and the Democrats are telling men to F off.
I think that there is definitely an aspect to that. I also think for the, fresh 18 to 22-year-olds, they were young under Trump's economy and probably watched their parents stress less than they do now, trying to set up their own lives.
What's the cure to loneliness, you think?
Friendship?
I think it's community building, and I think this starts with the family. I think the nuclear family in America isn't valued enough, but we also see it in the fact that there's less religious participation. People aren't volunteering at the same rates. Like, we are ultimately on our screens all the time thinking we're pseudo-connected to people as opposed to actually...
The cure for loneliness for men is meaning. Like, give them something to do. Give them something that matters.
But think about this. 17-year-old kid, young man, sitting in his room, playing video games, saying, I don't know what to do to improve my life. I don't know where to go. Imagine one day they decided to go to church. The people there would instantly be like, you're saved. We love you. You're amazing. Come hang out with us. We'll show you things. We'll teach you things. They're going to meet some guy and he's going to be like, let me show you how to do woodworking or something. Instant community among people who want to help them and make their lives better. I think this is probably why a lot of young men are drifting towards Jordan Peterson. And again, for better or for worse, Andrew Tate.
And Donald Trump.
And Donald Trump.
It used to be the military was a big part of community like that in this weird military where they fired a bunch of people for not getting it's like
8,600 people.
8,600
more than the entire militaries of some of our NATO allies.
And like talk about some resolute human beings unwilling to waver.
Wait. Are they going to bring them back?
Well, if they come back, they will not be automatically barred. But my legislation to give them full rank restoration and back pay, if we have screwed them over, we have not been able to get a vote on.
I think that I've met many people. It's not just the vaccine mandate stuff, which was a kick in the balls to many, many good people, but the DEI stuff in the military. I've met many officers who said that they've, and many, I mean like 2 or 3. Because I don't know a lot of people, but a couple. I spoke to a couple.
You got a lot of military who watch this show, and a lot of enlisted guys.
But a lot of I've had a handful of officers tell me that they've resigned their commissions because of DEI. I had one guy say that it was his dream to retire from the military as an old man and live out the rest of his days, and he was leaving in his mid-30s because of DEI.
The old men who are willing to do that are the people who make a great country.
Yep.
And lead a great country and inspire generations of service. And I'll give you one of the DEI stories from this Biden administration. Lloyd Austin comes in, he says, well, one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take everybody's picture off their promotion packet because people's inherent cultural bias could get them to see the picture and not pick someone who isn't like them. And then, of course, after that happened for a little while, do you think we became a more diverse officer class or a less diverse officer class? Of course. And then he had to reverse that policy. But it just shows that this stuff is driven with such reflex, and it reduces us to our immutable traits. Like, this is America, not some slave auction. We're not reduced to our immutable traits. We are a dynamic, interconnected group of people that ought to be able to judge one another based on what's on the inside, not on the outside. That used to not even be a controversial view. And now when you say it, people think you're a racist.
So, Matt, like I said before, I really think the biggest thing that young men need is meaning, which is part of the reason why young men do respond well in the military. Like, you've got a team together, you got guys together, you got bros that you're hanging out with, you don't want to let your team down. There's a meaning. You've got a goal, you can work together. It's great for young men. One of the things that I'm thinking about, or that has been on my mind lately, is the fact that when you have a nation of young men without meaning that have economic problems, you've got a tinderbox of social problems. Because young guys that don't have stuff to do, they go out and they get into fights. They go out and they commit crime. They go out and they do bad stuff. What kind of policy is possible? Not even should we implement. What kind of policy is possible to fix that? Because right now, I think that most of the problems that we have come from the fact that that young men are not being given any kind of support from society. Is that fixable?
I don't know. I kind of like go back to the calls of nature, right? Like what does a man want? Like, you want a companion, you want a family, you want a home, you want, the shelter. Like the caveman wanted certain things.
Sure.
And I think that we're not all that different now. And the more you deprive people of that, the more it's like, hey, you don't marry someone in this country anymore. You marry their debt. And you can't even have conversations anymore about being serious with someone if you're not going through how much debt they have. And that is so sad and debasing and dehumanizing to us. So that cuts against it. And then home ownership. I mean, you just saw the Fed today, Jerome Powell, saying that rates were going to stay the highest ever. So good luck if you're in your 20s or 30s and you actually want to own something. So we've moved away from the meaning of companionship because we've made that harder. We've moved away from the meaning of home ownership because and like when you own stuff, you're better to it. And if you don't believe me, think about the way you acted last time you were in a hotel room versus like your own place. And so I think that the policies that will encourage that will be policies that reduce this deficit. Again, as we're talking, we're accumulating this deficit, making money more expensive, and that makes it harder for people to live their dreams and achieve that meaning.
Now you're talking about something that's extremely important to me, mandatory spending. Everyone knows that Medicare, Medicaid are the major drivers of our debt, that we spend more money servicing the debt than we spend on our entire military every single year. We're spending more, and we're only going to spend more. There is nothing. There is no plan at all. What? No plan? And how come no one can come up with any type of plan that can even broach the system? Now, I understand that it's radioactive, But everyone also knows that the dollar is going to be blown up. Like, you're going to destroy the value of the dollar if people don't want to continue to buy our debt. So what do we do to fix it? How do we fix the unfunded liabilities and at the same time not toss grandma and grandpa into the ocean?
I think you have to, like, every journey starts with a single step. And on mandatory spending, for me, you start with the Medicaid program. I would freeze Medicaid and block grant it to the states and say, this is what you got. Go innovate, go do your thing. And there'll be some states that'll totally blow it, and their, like, poor population will probably be worse off. And there'll some states that'll come up with, like, the way to deploy 5,000 AI doctors to their poorest people, or they'll find some way to get primary care to people faster and easier so that they're not in higher expensive acute care. And then the goal under the federal system we have is that the best practices will emerge and be copied. And that's how you do it, as opposed to the system now that we have built around Medicaid, where if you're a state, you get more money the more you spend. When I was a state lawmaker in Florida, for every dollar we spent on Medicaid, we drew down $1.48. Why would you want to spend less? You want to spend more because that enhances your drawdown. So what is the maximum we can spend on this population? And that creates that sense of dependency that makes people, I think, less productive otherwise. So you start by block granting Medicaid. I think that creates momentum for other mandatory spending reform.
I think the way to fix the economy, one way to do it is to focus on GDP rather than the money itself, the gross domestic product. What are we producing here domestically? And if we start with hydrogen and we start retrofitting our economy to a hydrogen carbon fuel system, like a hybrid system, the hydrogen can be run through the methane ports that we already have open, according to Jim Tour at Rice University. You can produce this stuff from carbon trash by hitting it with 7,000 degree electricity called flash joule heating. You get hydrogen fuel and you get graphene byproduct. So it's like profitable to create hydrogen. The key is you got to convince the carbon industry that we're going to increase your profits. We're not going to lessen your money because we're going to start using hydrogen fuel. We're actually going to turn your carbon into graphene, and we're going to keep pumping that oil. We're going to keep drilling for that coal. And then we'll have massive production capacity. And then the dollar is just automatically worth 10 times more or whatever. So
because if you're producing more people are buying in the dollar.
So
for sure.
So I love it.
And it's cheaper.
It's amazing. It's such a great idea. It aligns very, very well with what I view as the more MAGA-aligned view of the United States. Unfortunately for you, the deep state, bureaucratic state, establishment, military-industrial complex says, gee, Ian, that's a whole lot of work. How about we make a bunch of guns and go blow up brown people in foreign countries so that they're forced to use our dollar?
Yeah, they're going to keep doing that.
It's not about convincing the carbon industry to adopt new metrics or new systems. It's about shutting down the cabal of psychotic warmongers.
Or repurposing their focus into a drone destruction program where we're blowing up drones instead of people. You can even paint the drones brown if you're obsessed with it.
That can affect the profits of the corporations, but doesn't change the fact the likes of Hillary Clinton and her ilk and the Liz Cheneys are thinking if we put more of our young men and women in harm's way in foreign countries, they'll be forced to use the petrodollar. They don't care about drone program profits or whatever. They care about, can we point a gun at a foreign country so they use the petrodollar?
Well, it's a carrot and a stick, because you go drop, tens of thousands of troops into Europe, you create an entire contracting economy around that's going to occur in the dollar.
Right.
So that's...
Yep. The reason they give the dollar, everyone said, why are we giving $12 million in gender studies to Pakistan? So that they spend the dollars. They want more of them because they have them. They have an incentive to value it because they have value in it.
You're right that the OPEC or this dollar where they're forcing people to use the U.S. dollar, that's a problem. But what's going to happen is some other country is going to start pumping out hydrogen with this flash joule technology before the United States.
I don't disagree.
And then the entire world's going to have to pivot, and we're going to be...
Don't even disagree. And that's why I think Trump is right. If you look at the direction the MAGA politics, the populist politics are going, it's secure our borders, bring jobs back, get the Americans back to work, better trade agreements so that they're not offshoring our jobs.
And stop being weird.
And stop being weird, for sure. But Trans-Pacific Partnership, you're out the window. Then you look at the Clinton, Biden, Obama, deep state garbage, the Cheneys, and it's, we don't want to do anything for the American people. We don't have to. We're going to make guns and we're going to bomb people. And then they have no choice but to use our stuff. And sooner or later, you're correct, there will be a shift. Russia just shuts down euro and dollars on their market. China's dumping dollars. They've been dumping bonds. They're going to adopt Bitcoin and gold. And then one day we're going to wake up and be like, Why is the dollar worthless? You pumped out massive amounts of it. The war machine was faltering and failing, and you did nothing at home to build up GDP. So that's why I like when Trump, he got $3 billion reinvested in Michigan for auto manufacturing. Think about how crazy that was. Amazing. And then as soon as Biden comes in, right back to Mexico.
One way to enhance our GDP is when all the Taiwanese move here because China makes a move on Taiwan. Well, I mean, like everyone's like, oh no, what will we do when China takes Taiwan? We won't have a blender that speaks 5 languages anymore. And I'm thinking like, well, where the fuck do you think these Taiwanese are going to go? They're not going to stick around. They're coming here. So that probably bodes well for us. We got a little learning to do there.
No, but the Biden administration would turn them away because they're that kind of smart administration.
I don't know if that's a fair critique of Biden.
There's a company.
I don't care if it's fair. Screw him.
There's like a private company that's working on this flash drill production technology for the carbon and the hydrogen. But what's the best way to work with the government for a large private graphene corporation to kind of subsidize?
Like if you just look, man, I knew I did not learn enough about graphene for this episode, but
You've been here before. You've had
I
time
know
to prep.
it's on me. I had a few other. I was trying to keep Steve Bannon out of jail today. I'm hoping to talk about that. Maybe that's our 10 o'clock hour subject. But like, if you look at how those things have been scaled with technology, principally throughout our nation's history, it's through the DoD, it's through the military, and for most of our lives, like in Silicon Valley, the most important stakeholder, the most important investor has been the Department of Defense. And now we're in a really different incentive structure where our brightest minds are not working on breakthrough technology. Our best minds are working on how to keep you on a video view for 0.8 seconds longer. And what's the way to get more likes on a meme,
Keep you
not how to
scrolling
get
indefinitely.
lasers and munitions
But like
aligned.
if we had DOD working with graphene corporations to like set up facilities all over the country and be like, look, we've got them in your district. We want to put one in every state. We want to put one in like 3 of them in every state.
Ian's already understanding congressional politics. You're going to want to start with the state of the appropriations chairman, the speaker, the key authorizers for armed services. That's okay. That's really where you're going to want to sprinkle this imaginary project.
Factories are going to go in their states.
We got to go to Super Chats.
That's how it works.
But I'll just do one quick question. Did you see the news report on the Harvard study about aliens on Earth?
I did not, and I try to keep up with that information.
A Harvard, they call it a study, suggested that UAPs may actually be aliens that are on the far side of the moon. I'm not kidding. This is what the report came out of Harvard. And they said they could be humans from the future, an advanced civilization of humans that we've long lost connection with. They could be an advanced species of apes that live underground, or I'm not kidding, they could be elves, fairies, or gnomes. I'm 100% serious. This is
then one of them definitely has to be Bill Crystal.
A gnome?
Or doesn't he look sort of like an elf, fairy, gnome?
Dwarf.
Permutation?
His lips.
Like a mythical dwarf. I don't know if the other one is offensive or whatever.
If it's option 3, it's definitely Bill Crystal.
We're going to go to Super Chats. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button? 1 like equals 1 FJB. That gets more likes than the other way. So also become a member at timcast.com for that uncensored call-in show, which will be coming up in about half an hour. You don't want to miss it. 10 p.m. on the front page at timcast.com. And we will read your Super Chats. Clint Torres is number 1. The first Super Chat saying, howdy, people.
Howdy, Clint.
Howdy. All right. Matthew Hammond says, can populist Republicans create a contract like in 1994 that says they will eliminate the D.C. Circuit Court, pass Massey's Prime Act, pass Congress, can only invest in index fund, and end duplicate functions in federal agencies?
Who would believe us if we did?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, every time I turn around, someone's got some new lame, like poll-tested, focused grouped, like contract. How about just like do? I would like us to just do stuff. And trust is built by keeping promises. And we have broken a lot of them, frankly, as a House Republican conference and around the boldness and the vigor with which we should have pursued the Biden administration. So, I mean, I'm just, I'm less of a contract guy than just an action guy.
Do you think that the time is to pursue the Biden administration is kind of running out? I mean, he's not polling particularly well. I mean, what are you guys going to get done before the end of the year?
How do you take seriously any effort to pursue these people while we fully fund them? Like Kevin McCarthy's original sin was underwriting the debt for the Biden administration, and subsequent leadership has advanced the spending priorities of these people. So it's like, how could a parent ever have discipline over a child if you just keep giving them more and more allowance no matter what they do?
Yeah.
That's where we are.
All right, so let's see what we got here. What do we have? The last campaign says, howdy, did you hear about the new Texas Stock Exchange? Is this a sign that Texas is ratcheting towards independence? Have you heard about this? They want to compete with they want a non-woke stock exchange, so Texas is going to launch their own.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I'm guessing it's going to be very oil heavy.
I'd imagine. Jonathan Timmons says, Tim, just wanted to say the Cast Brew support was amazing. Appalachian Nights now on sale at Okie Dokie Bakery in Oklahoma City. I also wish we had a Matt Gaetz repping Oklahoma.
Is this
Yes.
that guy whose wife owns a bakery? Because I think that's adorable.
Maybe. But Okie Dokie Bakery is selling Cast Brew coffee. So go to castbrew.com and pick up Ian's Graphene
Yeah, let me know
Dream.
if you sell any of that Graphene Dream. It's a new coffee blend, low acidity.
Ian's got his own coffee.
Graphene Dream. Get it now.
Put it in coffee.
Yeah, we never did.
I think
Not graphene.
I think that's
That's just a name.
try to convince me of that. I know he's put something in there.
I would advise against eating graphene. I'm not a doctor, though.
Pretty sure doctors would advise not to eat
Yeah, like don't eat steel.
carbon.
Use it for building.
Yeah. Brett Tesdell says, Rep Gaetz moved to Florida from Iowa last year. Proud to have you as my representative. The entire Iowa delegation has become an embarrassment.
Well, thanks for coming to Florida and being my boss. Truly, it's that is like the one thing I have is that the people in my district are my boss. I know that. I know they're the only people I work for. But we can't have every Republican move out of the Midwest. We need those electoral votes too. I worry sometimes every time I meet someone that's like, just move down to your district from Michigan. I'm like, no, one fewer vote in Michigan.
Yeah. Well, here's one. Greg Duvier says, Tim, I'm blackpilled after the North Dakota primary election. North Dakota had a chance to pick Dr. Rick Becker, our version of Gaetz. Instead, North Dakota picked a rhino. I don't want to vote for the rhino or the Democrat. Thoughts on write-in vote?
I had endorsed Becker. I thought he was the preferred candidate. Don't know much about North Dakota politics. Just thought Dr. Becker was someone who would fight for people's liberty, and it's a shrinking group that will. I would say vote still, because the hope has to be at this point that if you get Trump in there, courage will be sufficiently contagious, and that people who are otherwise spineless will grow a backbone and actually engage.
All right. Zimemaru says, Matt, do you know my Florida Congressman Vern Buchanan, District 16? If you do, any thoughts on him?
I know Vern. He's the dean of our delegation, been there a long time. McCarthy screwed him. He was actually in line to be the Ways and Means chairman, but McCarthy picked an inferior choice, a guy named Jason Smith from Missouri. And so, yeah, I like Vern. Good guy. Car dealer. Been a pretty successful guy.
All right. Otaku Magnet says, Matt, are the politicians you work with that are pushing war so hard oblivious to the current anger citizens have towards their warmongering? Do they think everyone will go along like sheep when they start drafting our kids to die for them?
I think they're all stuck in like a time warp where they think that anyone who wants to impose foreign policy realism is Neville Chamberlain, and anyone who wants to start 3 wars before lunchtime tomorrow is Winston Churchill. And they sincerely believe that. The war pimps are not just on the take. They have bathed in a self-righteousness, and there's a moral self-preening with them, with the neocons in both parties actually. And what's really crazy is that the Democrat Party has become the pro-war party. When there are these questions about war powers and war and peace, there is no more anti-war Democrats. Even the people like Ro Khanna, Ilhan Omar, who I used to work with on matters like war powers, Ukraine has radicalized the Democratic Party to be the pro-war party.
You're saying war realists like Neville Chamberlain, because he's the guy known for appeasing Hitler when Hitler wanted he invaded Czechoslovakia. He wanted the Sudetenland.
Neville Chamberlain was the British
Peace in our time.
who was viewed as the great kind of accommodationist to Hitler.
He thought at the time, I'm appeasing Hitler, there's going to be no war in Europe. And so they think now that if we give cede land to the Russians, that they'll just keep going.
Right. If somehow they think that Putin in the Donbass and in Crimea is the same thing as Hitler in Poland, which is just insane to me.
No, the Germans had been building up a war machine in preparation for that invasion for a decade before the invasion, or 8 years or something, under the guise
It was totally different ambitions. There were different goals.
Yeah. All right. Jacob Bali says, Tim, crew, and Rep Gaetz, I'm just tired of these lackluster Republicans. They are spineless and won't use their majority. I'm done. Either Congress does its job or I run for governor of Wisconsin and pull our state out of the union. No more jokes.
Why not both, though?
You know, what really bothers me is where's a single state to file criminal charges against any of these individuals the way they're going after Trump?
Is that what we want, Tim? I mean, there's an element of the Trump stuff that creates such a sadness in me. I'm 42 years old. I've given most of my life to the law. I went to law school. I was a lawyer. I've been a state lawmaker, a federal lawmaker. And to see the law used this way, it doesn't make me want to abuse it. It just...
Who said abuse it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want the law to be a tool of retribution. I don't. And I think that it sucks that they've done this and they've crossed the Rubicon. And
But I don't think...
I'm not like cheerleading some situation where we can go be like, oh, sweet, we can do a bunch of like extrajudicial punishment to people.
What about judicial?
We don't like
What about
them.
judicial accountability? What about we know that what Bragg is doing is there's a criminal conspiracy, a seditious conspiracy.
We have Bragg in the House Judiciary Committee the day after sentencing. What would you ask him?
I mean, the most obvious one is, and it's tough because I know how they weasel their answers around. Like when you were questioning the DEI guy, you're like, did you? And they give you this roundabout answer. First thing we need to know is, has there been any communication between you and
Bingo.
anyone in the DOJ? Yes or no?
Anyone on your team and anyone on their team. Are
Right.
you aware of any decision that was influenced, informed in any way?
But they're going to try and trick you. So it's, my approach would always just be, have you had any communications with any, have you or anyone you are working with been in communication with the Department of Justice? Yes or no? And then they're gonna play their game where they're like,
well, Congressman Poole, there are a lot of communications that happen in the world. Communications that happen on the phone, over email. There's some communications
so that's a
that
yes.
are in person.
Thank you. Appreciate
There's
it.
even a FAPTIC coupling.
Well, that's a yes.
communication.
There you go. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's a yes. We'll put that down.
What if they say, not to my recollection?
And these are the
that the
games
most
they play.
annoying weasel?
This is why I'm not convinced that these
And they give me 5 minutes. Doesn't that
Right.
seem like an insufficient amount of time?
But this is why I'm saying we need a red state AG or whatever, just to be like, hey, how about this? Hillary Clinton destroyed public records. She also has a campaign running in our state. Is there an overlap between the people in her organization who committed these crimes that we know about and anything her campaign had done? And then we actually hold them accountable for the things they've done. Not extrajudicially, not retribution, quite literally, okay, we're not playing games anymore. We know that there are criminal actions taking place. We're going to start charging people for them.
Well, and that has to be done not to settle a score, but to set a deterrent.
Yes.
I've become the biggest cheerleader of Bukele. He went in with his cabinet at the very beginning and said, I'd like to start the meeting by informing everyone here that the Attorney General will be investigating everyone for their financial situation, including me. And lo and behold, one of their ministers was a rat in the woodpile and had some bad drug money and got found out. And that's the kind of thing that wasn't done to punish that guy, but to set a new standard for a country that wanted to pull itself out of the mire and into a respectable place. And we kind of almost got to do the same. As we've descended into third world chaos, we almost need to look to some of the things that countries have done to right the ship.
The testimony...
But to your super chat that's going to run for governor, the future of governor of Wisconsin, this is a beef I have with some folks. We need people to run for office, but we also need people to run for stuff they can win. Okay, we need populists on the school board, on the county governments, at the state legislatures. And it's so frustrating when I see people who would be an ideal mayor or they'd be really great cutting their teeth in the state legislature say, oh, no. What's most important to me is that I run for Congress. Then they come in like 4th out of 7 and are not as capable. And there are more of us than there are of them, but not if we shoot ourselves in the foot.
Right. And all the funding that went to their campaign could have been more effective for a smaller office.
And I hate for it to come back to the money, because as I started out this discussion, I want to build a model that is less about the money and more about, are you inspiring an audience to take action that can get you the most votes? But at the same time, you have to have resources for any project. For this podcast, you guys have to have a budget and resources, and that creates an ecosystem where you can thrive economically.
Well, and you have to steward the money well. So especially if you're running for a state office, if you have people in your local community supporting you, wouldn't it be better if you invested the money wisely in a seat that you could win and really make a difference? If you have bigger ambitions one day, that's great. But why don't we start somewhere that you can affect?
I don't know. Maybe this guy's worth $100 million.
If he wants to run for governor,
well, then his super chat should be more. He should have more super chats if he's worth $100 million.
It was a good super chat. Here we go. CT says, Matt, are you going to co-sponsor Anna Paulina Luna's legislation to ban artificial food dues?
Dyes.
Okay, dyes is typo. And high fructose corn syrup. Those things are poison.
I am.
Yeah.
I've talked with Ms. Luna about it. I've been a part of working on that bill with her, and I'm going to co-sponsor it. She's awesome.
One of the biggest and best
Have you had her on?
things- Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
She came when we
Congress.
were in Lauren Bobo's
Right.
office.
You
she
were
came
there.
on.
Yeah.
Oh, right on.
People are cycling in.
RFK Jr., when we interviewed him, it was very obvious to me that there's actually only one thing he deeply cares about. And I'm being a little hyperbolic. He obviously cares about a lot of policy issues. But when you ask him about abortion, when you ask him about guns, he says, oh, yeah, oh, geez, oh, yeah. And then when it comes to toxins in the environment and our food, he lights up. Electricity surges through him, and he says, you've got the biphenyls, you've got the BPEs, plastics, you've got pesticides. He knows all about it. He's pissed about it, and he's right about it. So
I've been radicalized by Luke Rudkowski, who says there is a biological war being waged against each of us, and you become susceptible to that if you allow it, and you have to take affirmative steps to become resilient to that.
Dude, I just did an intestinal cleanse for that.
Okay,
very
that's
reason.
great.
I'll tell you all about it.
yeah, right. So we do have plastic water bottles.
That's in the special hour.
That's-
No,
Ian's
thank you.
intestinal
No.
cleanse.
No.
It doesn't even have to be in the special hour. Like, we could leave that
don't have to.
outside. We're not even talking about it.
all this stuff about
I was in the
loneliness,
hospital
it's
last
all-
week,
all
and we're not even going
connected
to talk
to that.
about that either.
When are we doing Bannon? Are we going to keep doing super chats? Because I got to give you this Bannon update. Are we going
Bannon,
to?
what's
Should
going on?
we do it at 10?
Bannon, right now.
Okay, I believe the only way Steve Bannon does not go to jail is if there is a vote at an entity called the BLAG, the Bipartisan Legal Advisory Group. It is made up of the Speaker of the House, the Majority Leader, the Majority Whip, the Minority Leader, and the Minority Whip. So the Republicans hold a 3-2 in this. Bannon is going to petition for an en banc review of this determination to revoke his bail. When he does, I believe the BLAG should and will take a 3-2 vote for the House to seek leave to file an amicus brief with the en banc court that the January 6th committee was illegitimate. It was illegitimately formed. It was a runaway committee. It did not have a proper minority member. And whether it's Peter Navarro or Steve Bannon, nobody should be sitting in a jail cell because they would not comply with the absurd musings of a committee unlike any before in our nation's history.
Talk me through that again. So he would go to this committee, this 5-person committee where there's 3 people.
Yes.
Or
3 Republicans.
And if they vote in favor, then they would create
And what
a
it would do,
committee?
what they would do is they would go to the court and say, we want to tell the court that it is now the official view of the House of Representatives that the January 6th committee was illegitimate. And then Bannon's lawyers could ask the court to take judicial notice of that vote by the BLAG, which would then give them a basis to allow his bail to stay in effect.
And Republicans can do this with the majority.
The majority, the Republicans can do this without even taking a floor vote. Mike Johnson, Steve Scalise, and Tom Emmer can do it, and it is my belief that they are working toward that end as we speak.
Oh, wonderful. That's good news.
What's the
That has been my
justification?
work all day.
What about Navarro?
Huh? He
Same thing.
deserves the same thing.
Yeah, he deserved it yesterday. He shouldn't even be locked up.
Should not.
What's the justification that the court was bunk? That if these people were to say vote 3-2, what would there be their
Oh,
justification?
sure. Yeah, the legal argument. I mean, if you look at the construction of any committee in Congress, it is informed by the majority party and the minority party providing their members, and then the minority, as a pursuant to the legislation that created the January 6th committee, requires a ranking member. Well, instead of that, Nancy Pelosi kicked off Jim Jordan, kicked off Jim Banks. So we took all of our minority members off and said this is an illegitimate committee. Nancy Pelosi then put Liz Cheney on. Didn't make her the ranking minority member. They put Kinzinger on. 2, they made her the vice chair. So this thing was not acting in accordance to the House resolution that had established it. And so its subpoenas were subject to this legal gray area that it's not a crime to say you want a court to resolve that question.
All right. Cameron Keir says the Democrat convention in Chicago will be 1968 all over again. I agree.
Ooh, wait, you think so?
Oh, yeah. We're not going. We'll be at the RNC. And it's tough. It's going to cost us money. We're going to be losing money on it, but it's more important.
But
not the DNC.
I don't think there's going to be any drama at the DNC. I think they're riding with Biden.
And you think the protesters will think that's cool?
Do you remember the 2016 DNC and RNC?
Yeah.
I thought that we were going to see, before the RNC, I'm like, there's going to be a big protest of the Republicans. Nope, nothing. Some marching. At the DNC, 1,000+ people were ripping the barricades down, trying to hop over them and storm into the DNC. The leftists were livid over Bernie Sanders.
Oh, so you're saying the Bernie bros were more agitated than the Jeb pinstripe crowd?
Yeah, at the RNC, it was kind of just like, oh, Republicans there doing their thing, and I'm like, but we have Trump. And then at the DNC, it was bedlam, wild. The left is trying to take over the Democratic Party.
The way you're describing it, it makes me want to watch you cover the DNC so much more than it makes me want to watch you cover the RNC, just to be honest.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. Elad Ali, was probably going to be there on the ground, but I have grown quite fond of living. So we won't be going to Chicago.
You've gone soft, bro. I don't think Vice days. You would have been there. You would have been on the ground getting us the skinny.
Well, to be fair, during the Vice days, nobody knew who I was. So when I'm on the ground, I can mind my own business. A few years after that, I show up and they're chasing me. They're running up to me. They're screaming in my face, and they're trying to like.
What's that like, Tim?
It's literally impossible to actually cover an event because if they're coming up to you and just
you've just described my afternoon at a Ruby Tuesdays.
Nice. You just ask people their name when you meet them?
No, people are always very kind. I get a detractor here and there.
I love making eye contact with people.
When you're out in public, it's mostly I would assume 99% of the people are fans.
Yes. Well, I'd say it splits about 90-10, truly.
Really?
Yeah.
The worst I ever get.
But I mean, I know I'm not for everyone.
Yeah.
But like the people who hate us, they do sort of. Part of the reason they hate us is they think we might be dangerous. So sometimes you just get like a sneer.
I was gonna say, I think they wouldn't approach you, right? Probably the people who.
Well, and I'm
come up to
super
you
approachable.
like you.
I don't mind when people come up and express their displeasure. I thank them for their feedback. It's part of the job. If you don't want to be yelled at, don't do this job.
I don't think that the Democratic.
Is it like Democrats who come to you?
I mean, you know, where I'm from, we've all heard of Democrats in the wild, but we've not really seen one. It's sort of like the Florida Panther.
The closer you get to one,
But I
the more
agree.
you become like one.
I'm in New York, and it's supposed to be Democrats everywhere. And no, I love your show, man. It's really great stuff. Not once.
I'm adhere to this president right now. I mean, he's failing.
I've had people come up to me and tell me I would never vote for you, but I have newfound respect for you because I watch you on the Timcast. They are Democrats.
Timcast viewers who wouldn't vote for you?
Yeah.
Wow, that's surprising.
Yeah. Well, there are people who watch the show who do not agree with you, who are not going to vote the way that you want them to vote, but it's just intellectually provoking for them to observe the discussions.
A lot of libertarians too.
With the DNC, I don't think it's going to be crazy this time because I don't think the fervor's there. The Bernie people that were betrayed.
Yeah, like who feels jilted by Joe Biden?
No, nothing. Maybe if they swap out Biden and put somebody in before, there'll be riots.
Oh yeah, imagine if they skipped over Kamal. If Gavin Newsom rode in like a white knight, the K-Hive would go crazy.
That could make some noise.
I don't know. Like Kamala is kind of just a mannequin in the background. You know what I mean? She's not really anything there for anybody. Is anybody really excited?
Charlemagne the God says she's the one with the main character energy.
Really?
Wow. Yeah, Biden doesn't have the main character energy. It's Kamala.
Well, he definitely has no energy. That's true. But
Yes, shit your pants energy.
Kamala has as
We'll
NPC
give you energy.
energy. Huh? Biden's gone. Kamala Harris is a non-player character.
I feel like she's biding her time, like very like standing there
How are
watching,
they ever
acting
gonna
like
skip
an idiot.
her? How is
They
the
can't.
part?
They set themselves up so they can't. But
Right.
they also don't want her. She doesn't poll well enough for them, which I find fascinating. They have put themselves in an impossible position. And for what? What did they gain from any of this?
Who do you want to see debating her in the vice presidential debate?
Vivek.
I mean, I don't want Vivek to be vice president. I would love to see him tested in Ohio first. I am really interested in J.D. Vance.
I tried to get
do you
Vivek to
wanna
run
be?
for that Ohio Senate seat.
You did?
I said, Vivek, you got such great talent. You're not going to be president. You should run for the Senate seat in Ohio. He's very gracious about it. I love Vivek.
He's cool. He's
but he
really
would have been
cool.
so good in the Senate. Imagine him on the floor of the Senate.
And in all of these meetings where he gets to question people, he would have been amazing.
I know.
Who do you want to see debate Kamala Harris?
I asked you.
Well, I asked you second.
I think that Rubio or Vance would smoke her in a debate. And I've known Rubio for 20 years.
I think Rubio's going to be the VP.
So I think he would be great. I really do. I think he would be great. I think you definitely want a senator. Here's why. If you really look at the way that these appointments have to go, this notion that the majority leader of the Senate dictates the calendar is a new construct. We need a vice president that's going to be like John Adams and sit over there in the Senate and preside over the Senate and say, oh, guess what? You're not going to confirm our nominee to CIA? Well, I've just decided that we're out of session for 6 months and the administration will be making some recess appointments. Like there's a way, with a vice president who knows the Senate to do that. So you got to find somebody who gets it enough to be able to execute, but who doesn't have such reverence for it that they're sitting around waiting for Mitch McConnell's replacement to be de-thawed.
I don't trust Rubio. I view him more as an establishment player.
I would love to have him in here. I don't know him. If you know him,
you like him.
Yeah, we should talk.
I've heard really good
That means a lot coming from you. So,
Yeah.
but
I don't agree with him on everything. By the way, he would say the same. I mean, but
the rumors that I've heard is that it's already a done deal for VP. And I've stressed this to an absurd degree. This is not coming from anyone in the administration. It's coming from like Beltway politicos.
Tim, I'm 100% certain this decision has not been made.
All right.
100% certain. And there's only one person that's going to make this decision, and it's Donald Trump. This is not so. Everyone who's like, oh, well, this person as the insider is going to make the decision. Trump is making this decision.
If it's Rubio and the Senate seat opens up, would you run for Senate?
I don't know. If I was going to go to an old folks home, the Villages sounds a lot better than the Senate.
I make the Senate.
By the way, I'll be in the Villages on the 18th of June. Go to mattgaetz.com.
Oh,
I just read that the average age in the Senate is like 64.
Wow.
Fascinating.
I'm not a fan of the Senate at all. I think we got to get rid of the 17th Amendment, I believe it is, right?
If we can't fix the People's House, what hope do we have at the House of Lords? My thing has to work in the House, or it's not going to work there.
How tight are they with the British monarchy?
Who?
The House of our House of Lords,
our senators? I don't know.
Are better
they don't.
men.
They don't ever give me the secret handshake.
I wonder how deep they are with the empire.
Well, we didn't fly the British flag in Congress at all. We flew the Ukrainian flag, so that's probably more of my concern.
That's the current proxy war of the British Empire. And I feel like we're a late stage empire where it's like in Rome where the Praetorian Guard are in control now, where if the emperor steps out of line, they kill him and put a new emperor in. But Charles was just so backseat and Elizabeth was so backseat. They're like, live and let live. Yeah, I could turn Canada into Britain and just make it part of England if I wanted to, but I'm not gonna because you'd kill me and then take control. So I think the CIA is really, I don't know if it's the CIA, MI6, are kind of running the empire, and we're like business cahoots with them as the United States.
And we will find out the answer to that question on the members-only call-in show coming up in just about a minute. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com, click Join Us. Members are going to call in and talk to us, and we're going to talk about issues uncensored. So it'll get a bit more spicy. But again, timcast.com, that'll be in about a minute. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Again, become a member, smash the like button. Matt, did you want to shout anything out?
Yeah, go to mattgaetz.com. Join the movement. We need you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Good to see you again, dude.
Yeah.
Let's go deeper next time in about 5 minutes.
About 5 minutes.
Yeah. See you guys. Ian Crossland. Catch you later.
Thanks, Matt. I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can catch us this summer on the Destroy All Enemies tour with Megadeth and Mudvayne. That starts August 2nd, goes through till September 28th. This Friday, we have a new video coming out. You can pre-save now. The link is in my YouTube page. The song is called Let You Go. You can check out our other video called Divine. It's available on Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music. Deezer. Thank you, Tim. Don't forget, the left lane is for crime. Hannah Claire.
Matt, are you and Ginger going to go to Phil's tour this summer?
Do you like Megadeth?
Oh,
Are you a metal
how
fan?
could I miss Phil Stewart?
Okay, put him down for some tickets.
Are you into metal? I can get you in.
No.
Okay.
I listen to folk music, but I'd come to listen to you.
There's nothing wrong with folk music.
You got to come play poker sometime at MGM.
I don't know if that'd go well. Do you have a poker table over there?
We do. It's really nice. We're setting up the show, so.
It's a summer of activities for you. I'm Hannah Claire Brimmel. I'm a writer for SCNR.com. That's Scanner News. Follow all of our work at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram. Follow me on Instagram at hannahclaire.b and on Twitter at hannahclaireb. Thank you guys for everything you do. Bye, Serge.
Say to Hannah Claire. Bye, guys.
We'll see you all over at timcast.com in about a minute. Thanks for hanging out.